where women make the first move. Here's Anna Williamson and Tom Reed-Wilson with some tips on connecting online.
It's a bit harder to flirt with limited body language, but nothing beats a smile and some eye contact to show them you're interested.
And have an activity plan for your date. This will help break the ice.
Download Bumble today.
Okay, people, I've got the daily checklist. Who today has eaten dinner for breakfast? Tick. Started a chore you'll never finish? Tick. Done a conference call in your pajamas? Tick. Here's another for your list. BritBox. Streaming the BBC, ITV, Channel 5 and now Channel 4. All in one place and ad-free. So add BritBox to your list and get a 30-day free trial of the biggest box of British box sets. Search BritBox free trial. Tick. Biggest compared to other SVOD providers. Auto-renews at $5.99 a month unless cancelled. T's and C's apply.
We've never been further apart, yet somehow never closer. To support people making a difference and those local communities affected during these extraordinary times, Barclays is supporting the Big Night In appeal. We kickstarted our donation with £1 million and matched Barclays customer donations up to a total of another £1 million. So far, the appeal has raised an incredible amount. So thank you. Visit barclays.co.uk to find out more about how your donations are helping. All donations will be split between the registered charities.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Get your MLB fix with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Fill your seventh inning stretch with the Ringer MLB Show.
I just can't get over it. It's like, well, Jeter Downs didn't realize he was a top. Like, my dad is drinking the Kool-Aid on this. He's like, of course. Mookie was going to leave. I'm like, what do you mean? You don't know that.
Slide into second with the Starting Nine podcast.
Nolan Arenado slides right into the top spot for a favorite baseball player. Active in the league right now. It is a pleasure to be sitting next to you, sir.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
This is we've been waiting a long time for this. We actually, in terms of like active
round the bases with the Statcast podcast.
Ways of going about it. I picked third, so in some ways it made it easier for me. Mike. Just to go over the first couple of picks, Mike took Barry Bonds, who I think was kind of the obvious guy to take number one. Not only
catch these and more MLB podcasts right here on TuneIn.
From the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York, Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston, Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco, Bloomberg 960 to the country, Sirius XM Channel 119, and around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
It's 6:30 on Wall Street. Good morning. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. We are just about 3 hours away from the opening of U.S. trading. Let's get you up to date on the news you need to know at this hour. Congress has sent the latest coronavirus aid package to the White House. Lawmakers overwhelmingly passed the $480 billion bill. Now they face off over the next rescue measure, where funds for state and local government take center stage. Here with the latest is Bloomberg's Emily Wilkins in Washington.
There's a debate over how much should be given to states and localities. You saw several Republicans coming out and saying that if states aren't able to continue funding, they might need to declare bankruptcy. That's something that a number of governors have pushed back against, saying that they need help from the federal government at this point as well. So that is definitely a debate to sort of keep our eye on going forward.
President Trump is expected to sign the current measure today, which will replenish the Paycheck Protection Program for small businesses and provide funds for hospitals and virus testing.
Well, the White House is also weighing aid for the oil industry. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin is considering a lending program for U.S. companies reeling from the plunge in oil prices. Here with more is Bloomberg's Anne-Marie Hordern.
They're considering taking financial stakes in exchange for some loans, and some firms might be asked to reduce production. But we have seen President Trump really want to lend a helping hand to the U.S. oil industry because they are in dire need.
The White House has vowed to stem job losses in the industry as a plunge in prices hits the shale patch. After a historic week, oil is stabilizing now. West Texas Intermediate is lower by 0.25% or 4 cents, $16.48 a barrel. Brent is higher by almost 2% at $21.75.
U.S. deaths from COVID-19 are now approaching 50,000. The outbreak is easing in some of the hardest hit spots while gaining steam in others. For the latest, we're joined live by Bloomberg's John Tucker. Good morning, John.
And good morning, Karen. We're seeing daily infections in the U.S. increase at the slowest pace in 3 weeks. Cases rose just 2.5% overall. The spread appears to be slowing in New York, New Jersey, and Florida, while picking up in Massachusetts and Texas. Nationwide infections are nearing 900,000. Live in New York, I'm John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, John, thank you. S&P futures are higher, up about 15 points. Dow futures up 97. NASDAQ futures up 26. The 10-year Treasury down 1/32, yield 0.60%. The yield on the 2-year 0.22%. NYMEX crude oil, little change now at $16.51 a barrel. COMEX gold is up 0.6% or $9.70 at $17.55 an ounce. The euro 1.0765 against the dollar, and the yen is at 107.65. And straight ahead, we have the latest world and national news, and this is Bloomberg.
Thanks, Karen. 6:33 on Wall Street, and Michael Barr is here with us to get a check of what's going on around the world. Michael?
Thank you very much, Nathan. A New York study seeking to measure the spread of the coronavirus found that almost 14% of 3,000 people tested across the state had signs of the virus. New York State is approaching 21,000 deaths from the virus. In New Jersey, Governor Phil Murphy says he understands that businesses want to reopen, but the state has yet to flatten the curve.
We try to call every shot we can here based on science, fact, data. I want to open up as much as the next guy, by the way. We're not there yet. We're just not there yet. Now, that doesn't mean we're not preparing and wargaming for that, trying to get the right level of advice, which we are. But the house is still on fire.
There are now more than 5,400 deaths reported in New Jersey from COVID-19. Connecticut is reporting more than 1,600 deaths. California Governor Gavin Newsom has reported a sad signpost in the coronavirus fight. Bloomberg's Ed Baxter has the story.
While he says there's a decrease in hospitalizations and ICU admissions,
the disease killed more people in the state of California in the last 24 hours than any previous 24 hours. We still have more positives in this state every day. So disease continues to spread, and we need to continue to spread the word of vigilance.
And he spent some time urging separation as the state heads into a beautiful weather weekend. He says if people go to the beach and aren't careful, he will be reporting an increase in cases next week. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Government research shows bleach and strong rubbing alcohol are considered the best ways to kill coronavirus on inside surfaces.
I can tell you that bleach will kill the virus in 5 minutes. Isopropyl alcohol will kill the virus in 30 seconds, and that's with no manipulation, no rubbing, just spraying it on and leaving it go. You rub it and it goes away even faster.
Bill Bryan, a senior science official at the Department of Homeland Security, also says that experiments with coronavirus samples indicate that the virus does not do well under sunlight, in warm temperatures, or in humid conditions. Intrigued by Bryan's presentation, President Trump suggested hitting the body with a tremendous ultraviolet or just very powerful light. The WHO has warned against using UV lamps to sterilize any part of the body, saying it can cause skin irritation. Presumptive Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden is calling on Congress to provide enough money for every state to allow voters to cast a mail ballot this November amid the coronavirus pandemic. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
Thanks, Michael. Almost 6:36 on Wall Street now. Time for the Bloomberg Sports Update with John Stashauer. John?
All right, Nathan, the NFL's virtual draft got pretty good reviews on social media. Began with the Bengals, to the surprise of no one, taking LSU quarterback Joe Burrow, who grew up not far from Cincinnati. At the start of last season, Burrow was projected as just a 6th-round draft pick.
Well, I wasn't very good my junior year. You know, it's pretty simple. I worked really hard to get better. All my guys worked really, really hard to get better. And we just gelled as a team this year to do exactly what we did. I just wasn't as good as I was my senior year. But I worked really, really hard to improve.
Burrow transferred to LSU from Ohio State, so the Buckeyes' 2017 roster had the first 3 picks last night as 2 Ohio State defensive guys followed. Chase Young to Washington, Jeff Okudah to Detroit, and that put the Giants on the clock. They took tackle Andrew Thomas from Georgia, a guy who plays the piano and the drums, and the hope is he can protect Daniel Jones and open some holes for Saquon Barkley. The Jets with the 11th pick also took a tackle, Mekhi Becton from Louisville, who's 6'7", 370 pounds. Both Thomas and Becton went pro after their junior years. They were both 3-year starters. There was a lot of speculation about Tua Tagovailoa. Had a brilliant career at Alabama, but there were injury concerns Miami still drafted him 5th overall. Another QB, Oregon's Justin Herbert, followed for the LA Chargers. And later, Green Bay, looking for the eventual replacement for Aaron Rodgers, moved up to take Utah State's Jordan Love. 15 guys, nearly half the first round, played in the SEC. The second and third rounds take place tonight, rounds 4 through 7 tomorrow. John Stashauer, Bloomberg Sports. Nathan.
John, thanks. 6:37 on Wall Street.
The following commentary is from Bloomberg Opinion.
Washington needs to embrace its role as ultimate risk manager. I'm Justin Fox, a columnist for Bloomberg Opinion. The U.S. government's efforts to battle the coronavirus and its economic fallout have been tagged with the term unprecedented a lot. In sheer scale and speed, they are. But government's role as risk manager isn't new at all. In the sharp economic downturn of the early 1780s, state after state passed stay laws to protect farmers from foreclosure. After that came bankruptcy laws, bank rescues, unemployment insurance, Social Security, and disaster relief. The U.S. government is up to its elbows in risk management, historian David Moss wrote in his 2002 book, When All Else Fails. When I checked in with Moss, he was not disapproving of Washington's recent exertions. He did say, though, that it would help if we acknowledged these risk management responsibilities in good times and actually prepared. I'm Justin Fox. For more opinion, please go to Bloomberg.com/opinion or OPIN Go on the Bloomberg terminal.
This has been Bloomberg Opinion.
You can hear Bloomberg Opinion commentaries every weekday at this time. Terminal customers can read more at OPIN Go. Just before 6:39 on Wall Street now, time for the Bloomberg Green Report. Here's Bob Moon.
You might think satellites would be a great tool for tracking the growing buildup of plastic garbage at sea, but orbiting eyes in the sky haven't been able to produce images in enough detail and frequency to do that accurately. Until now, research just published in the journal Nature Scientific Reports has demonstrated that new high-resolution satellites can pick up the mess of plastic waste bobbing at sea, and using artificial intelligence, scientists were also able to discern trash from natural materials like seaweed and sea foam. A team led by UK's Plymouth Marine Laboratory collected a small dump's worth of plastic bottles, bags, and fishing nets and temporarily floated them out to sea. They were photographed by European Space Agency satellites and high-flying drones, and researchers developed a method to identify light wavelengths, both visible and infrared, of materials commonly found in debris patches. They hope the work can help support active cleanup operations. That's the Bloomberg Green Business Report. I'm Bob Moon.
All right, Bob, thanks. Now some other stories we're following. Shares of Intel down 4.5% in early trading. The company did report profit that topped estimates, but it withdrew its full-year sales forecast, citing significant economic uncertainty due to the COVID-19 outbreak. Intel sees weaker enterprise and government demand for chips in the second half. JCPenney has started preparing for a potential bankruptcy filing. Bloomberg News has learned the department store chain is discussing a loan that would keep it operating during a Chapter 11 restructuring. Coronavirus forced Penny to close its stores. Hertz has brought in restructuring advisors. Sources say bankers from Moelis & Company are reworking the rental car company's debt. Hertz is looking to avoid filing for bankruptcy amid a bleak outlook for business trips and vacations. And finally, shares of Nestle are up 3% overseas. First quarter sales better than estimated as consumers loaded up on Nestle's frozen foods during the pandemic. U.S. futures moving higher. This is Bloomberg.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing, LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
This is a Bloomberg Pursuit.
Okay, people, I've got the daily checklist. Who today has eaten dinner for breakfast? Tick. Started a chore you'll never finish? Tick. Done a conference call in your pajamas? Tick. Here's another for your list. BritBox. Streaming the BBC, ITV, Channel 5, and now Channel 4. All in one place and ad-free. So add BritBox to your list and get a 30-day free trial of the biggest box of British box sets. Search BritBox free trial. Tick. Biggest compared to other SVOD providers. Auto renews at $5.99 a month unless cancelled. T's and C's apply.
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care. About each other. About our planet. About creating a better world for everyone. And becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Make sure to accept your offer by the UCAS deadline and visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
With the NHL season temporarily on ice, now is a good time to catch up on past games.
Bergeron, he scores!
With game replay on TuneIn, you can listen to every power play, slap shot, and goal of the 2019-2020 season so far.
Suter to Cunnin to Fiala, he scores!
And for a limited time, it's free for hockey fans everywhere. Search Classic Game Replays to start listening.
America, your children have an amazing superpower. That's right. They can help save lives by simply washing their hands. Just 20 seconds of thorough hand washing after they've coughed or sneezed or been outside can help fight against the dastardly spread of germs. Armed with only soap and water and hands, your superhero can protect you, your family, and everyone out there in America land. Amazing! Find out more at coronavirus.gov. A message from the CDC and the Ad Council.
Hey, it's Jacoby here from Jalen and Jacoby, and after you watch The Last Dance on ESPN, which you're obviously going to do just like the rest of us stuck in our homes in quarantine, you can join Jalen Rose and I for Jalen and Jacoby, The After Show. And we will be joined by the director of the documentary series, Jason Eyre, to discuss each episode in detail. You can hear our After Show right here on ESPN Radio on Sunday nights after the episodes air, and they'll be available on the Jalen and Jacoby podcast feed. Search Jalen and Jacoby to listen today.
Financial information 24 hours a day. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update.
Special report, coronavirus update. Unemployment numbers show 1 in 6 American workers have lost their jobs. Meantime, Congress passes a nearly $500 billion spending package to help U.S. businesses and hospitals. South Carolina Republican Senator Tim Scott on the House passage of this new economic relief plan.
The facts are we're going back to Washington May 4th. I do not anticipate anything happening between now and May 4th as it relates to additional stimulus. It's going to take a serious digestion of how much good we've just done over the last 4 packages, and for us to make a decision to add more on top of that without being able to measure the results may be premature.
Senator Scott, in an interview on Westwood One's Jim Bohannon show, that new bill is awaiting President Trump's signature. On Wall Street, Dow futures are up 0.5%. I'm John Trout.
They don't just talk to the most important people.
Is it as ominous this time around?
They talk with the most interesting people.
Are they taking this seriously?
Bloomberg Markets, weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. The Bank of Russia finally joining other emerging markets with a half-point interest rate cut to support an economy that's heading into its worst economic slump in more than a decade. The benchmark interest rate was cut 50 basis points to 5.5%. U.S. stock index futures, meanwhile, higher as investors assess the latest virus numbers and fresh stimulus measures to limit the economic hit from the coronavirus pandemic. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up almost 21 points. Dow futures up 149, NASDAQ futures up 43. The DAX in Germany's down 0.8%. 10-year Treasury down 132nd, yield 0.60%, yield on the 2-year 0.22%. NYMEX crude oil is up 0.6% or 8 cents at $16.58 a barrel. COMEX gold is up 0.7% or $11.90 at $17.5750 an ounce. The euro 1.0785 against the dollar, the yen 107.63. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael.
Karen, Congress has delivered a nearly $500 billion infusion of coronavirus spending, bringing new relief to employers and hospitals buckling under the strain of a pandemic. President Donald Trump is scheduled to sign the bill today. More evidence is emerging that far more New Yorkers have had the coronavirus than the number confirmed by lab tests. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo said that blood samples collected from about 3,000 people indicated that nearly 14% had developed antibodies to fight a coronavirus infection. In the virtual NFL draft, round 1, quarterback Joe Burrow went overall as the number 1 pick to the Bengals. The Redskins took defensive end Chase Young with the number 2 pick. The Giants took offensive tackle Andrew Thomas in the 4th pick. The Jets took another offensive tackle, Mekhi Becton, with the 11th pick. Also in the first round, the 49ers selected defensive tackle Javon Kinlaw and wideout Brandon Ayuk. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
All right, Michael, thank you. We are live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios, where it is 6:49 on Wall Street. Now it's time to check what's going on in D.C. Some of the top stories in the nation's capital include President Trump preparing to sign the latest round of stimulus, nearly $500 billion in new aid to small businesses and hospitals. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin seeking equity now in public companies that want a piece of $17 billion in assistance. And the president holding out hope that summer weather or even disinfectant injections could kill the coronavirus. Also making news, the president's evolving response to the pandemic and its potential effect on his approval ratings. For more on that, we're joined live by Kathleen Hunter, U.S. politics editor for Bloomberg. Good morning, Kate. Can you just update us quickly on where the president's polling is right now? And does it show any evidence that his response to this crisis has been affected by it?
Well, I think there's some worrying signs for the president in the polling that we've seen this week. A majority of Americans now disapprove of his response to the coronavirus. That is a shift from what we saw, several weeks ago now at this point, and the gap has been widening. We've also seen some polling this week that indicates that voters have less confidence in the president than they do in their state and local leaders in terms of handling this response, as well as a poll that indicated that Trump, in a head-to-head matchup, is now trailing Joe Biden, the presumptive Democratic nominee, in 3 key 2020 battleground states. And so all of that taken together, I think, is, disturbing. It seems like the trend for the president is moving in the wrong direction.
And you mentioned that trust gap between the president and state and local leaders. How could that play out as we head closer to November?
Well, I think it's a question, really, the president has really set this up as an idea of, the federal government's role now being, although he's not been consistent on that, but it's set it up now that the federal government's role is going to be providing guidance, which they've done now to the state and local governments on when and how to reopen. And I think that is intended at least partly to provide some political cover for the federal government and for the president in an election year, so that they can say, look, this is, the responsibility of the state and locals and not necessarily the federal government to see how this goes and to make those determinations. I think that, if people are happy, though, with the decisions that are being made at the state and local level. And of course, that remains to be seen if that trend continues. But if it should, or if it does, then I think that provides, some questions and could continue to have people feeling as though they, trust their state and local leaders rather than the president to have handled this crisis.
When you talk about guidance from the president, very interesting commentary from the president last night after a presentation at the nightly press briefing about the possibility of sunlight or even disinfectant injections being used as ways to combat the coronavirus. What did you make of that presentation last night? Where does it fit into the overall shift in the president's response to this?
Well, I think that, aside from the fact that obviously, medical experts are, cautioning people against particularly injecting themselves with disinfectant because that, could be very dangerous for people. So I think that's important to say at the outset. There is no medical evidence that would be helpful. I think narratively how it fits into Trump's argument that he's been making all along is the president has, I think, down the line really consistently tried to portray this virus as something that is going to be solvable by the U.S. government, by medical experts. There's been, I think very overly ambitious talk from the president about testing capacity, about, the time frame for developing a vaccine. He said in February that the virus might just disappear in April when the warmer weather came around. Obviously, that hasn't happened. But I think in some ways this can be viewed as sort of the next step in the president kind of being perhaps overly optimistic on the idea that there's a quick fix solution to the virus out there.
In terms of potential fixes for the economic damage from this pandemic, what are you going to be looking for next as the debate continues over the next round of stimulus funding potentially from Congress?
Well, I think that, we're beginning to see both sides, that being Democrats and Republicans, falling a bit back into their more traditional positions when it comes to, providing funding, government funding for anything here. We did see them as in the past couple of weeks pass a ton of stimulus money and do it in at least in congressional terms at lightning fast speed. I think this next round is going to be perhaps more difficult if it happens at all before the election. And it looks like the battle lines there are shaping up as Democrats being insistent that they want to have a lot more funding, particularly for state and local governments. And now we're seeing Republicans beginning to talk more about the problems they see with deficit spending and not wanting to add to that deficit spending. And so I think that, that's kind of the battle lines that are being set up going forward.
Thanks for this, as always, Kate. Good talking with you. That's Kathleen Hunter, U.S. Politics Editor for Bloomberg News. Karen?
Nathan, thank you. It is 6:54 on Wall Street. It's time for the Bloomberg Small Business Report. And here's John Tucker. Good morning, John.
Yeah, good morning, Karen. The restaurant industry reeling in the face of the COVID-19 pandemic. Boloco, a Boston-based family of 8 modern Mexican restaurants, no exception. John Pepper owns the business, and he's with us now. John, just how quickly did foot traffic in your restaurants evaporate after the stay-at-home orders went into effect?
The financial district of Boston became a ghost town almost immediately. We closed those 4 restaurants on the 18th of March. A week later, I put out a video, essentially 2 days before I thought we had to close the rest of everything, saying instead of letting everybody know we had closed, I felt maybe I should let people know most likely we're going to close because I didn't see any avenue to stay open. Turns out that video caused an outcry of support. We raised over $60,000. We basically pivoted into a nonprofit model for the last 4 weeks. We created this Feed the Front Line, which is now a very ubiquitous term, but we ended up just keeping the restaurants open to feed hospital workers throughout Boston and throughout New England. That's how we kept things going for the last 4 weeks, and then we finally did just shut everything down yesterday with the last restaurant. But we kept people employed. We helped them figure out how to apply for unemployment, and we ensured as soon as we knew we had the PPP, nobody will be left behind. We paid everybody March 16th until this past Sunday an extra $2 an hour for every hour worked, and we just have committed that nobody will not have income during that period based on the fact that the PPP loans came through.
You are grateful that you did get a loan through the Small Business Administration, but it comes with some stipulations that really make you think about the future of the business.
Yeah, that's for sure. How much of this $650,000 in our case, which is a lot of money, that just sounds like a windfall at first. at a glance. But how much of that will turn into a loan, and will we be able to generate the cash flow necessary to pay it back in a short 18-month period once we have to start paying it? And that, by definition, if you do the math, is going to be almost impossible for most restaurant companies. If they don't go for full forgiveness, the amount left over as a loan will be a very challenging number to meet from a cash flow standpoint over the following 18 months.
All right, John, thanks. Wish you all the best. You're going to check in later this year to see how the business is doing. John Pepper, he owns Beloco, Boston-based family of 8 modern Mexican restaurants. And we're going to continue bringing you stories of small businesses fighting to survive in the face of the coronavirus outbreak every day at this time on Bloomberg Daybreak. I'm John Tucker. That is the Bloomberg Small Business Report for today. Karen.
All right, great. We look forward to them every day. John, thank you. Futures this morning are higher. S&P futures up 21 points. Dow futures up 166. And NASDAQ futures up 46. The DAX in Germany is down 0.5%. 10-year Treasury down 1/32, yield 0.60%. And the yield on the 2-year 0.21%. And the euro at 1.0780 against the dollar. Bloomberg Surveillance is straight ahead with Tom Keene, Jonathan Farrell, and Lisa Abramowitz. For Nathan Hager, I'm Karen Moscow. And this is Bloomberg.
Influential conversations from Bloomberg.
Want to relive the glory of college football?
Balls over a man, into the end zone.
Come explore TuneIn's classic game replay collection to hear ESPN's complete coverage of the 2019 New Year's 6 bowl games. Don't miss your chance to re-experience the Rose Bowl, the 2020 National Championship, featuring Clemson and LSU.
There's going to be 2 champions on the field tomorrow night. There's going to be 1 team hold up the trophy.
10, rise to the 5, touchdown! Search classic game replays to listen for free.
With the NHL season temporarily on ice, now is a good time to catch up on past games. With Game Replay on TuneIn, you can hear every matchup of the 2019-2020 season so far. And for a limited time, it's free for hockey fans everywhere. Search classic Game Replays to start listening.
To help make the most of your time at home, TuneIn is sharing our top activities for social distancing. Tip number 4, relax. Don't feel like you have to be productive during these stressful days? This is the perfect time to focus on yourself. Whether that means meditating, taking a bath, sleeping in, or doing nothing at all, take a deep breath and treat yourself. For more indoor inspiration, search Listen from Home on TuneIn.
Wondering what to play next? Want to know what other TuneIn listeners are listening to right now? Head to the trending section under Browse to explore the most popular stations and podcasts on TuneIn today. Millions of listeners like you can't be wrong.
Segments of Alphabet's business are most likely to come under scrutiny.
Get all the pieces.
They're getting mixed signals from governments.
He's failed to gain traction.
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
We are being taken out of our comfort zone by the coronavirus.
Dollar weakness is pretty much a good thing for a lot of the rest of the world.
Finance.
We are going to see a global demand contraction this year, most likely, for oil. The financial health of the business sector has deteriorated somewhat.
Investment.
Obviously, the value in high vol stocks are going to continue to suffer.
It looks as though the bond market is talking itself into a recession here.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene, Jonathan Farrell, and Lisa Abramowitz on Bloomberg Radio.
From New York City, for our audience worldwide, good morning, good morning. This is Bloomberg Surveillance. Coming up on the program, another rescue package heading to the president's desk. As European countries fight between themselves over the path forward, the data on both sides of the Atlantic continues to roll over. From the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio, hello Friday. I'm sure many of you are happy it's here. Here is your Friday morning price action. Up 23 points on the S&P 500. Session highs and up 0.8% on the week. It's been an ugly one. We're down by a little more than 2.5% on the S&P 500, potentially heading for the biggest weekly loss going back to late March. Yes, this week has not been great. At one point this week, Treasury yields coming close to all-time lows on a closing basis, slightly lower over the week. That was last Tuesday when we came close to those record lows on a closing basis, nowhere near on an intraday basis. Your 10-year yield this morning, 0.61%, coming up around about a basis point. In foreign exchange, the dollar showing just a little bit of weakness against the pound. Cable advancing by 0.1%. The story of the week, crude lower, aggressively so at one point earlier this week. Right now, higher once again, showing a little bit of stability, up 3% on WTI. We reclaim a 17 handle, $17 a barrel on WTI. From New York City this morning, good morning. Fantastic to be with you all. Alongside Tom Keene, I'm Jonathan Ferro. Together with Bloomberg's Lisa Abramovich, you are listening to Bloomberg Surveillance. I want to begin the program by just comparing and contrasting the United States and Europe, and not on the public health crisis, but on the economic response to it. For all the bickering in Washington, once again, the United States is getting it done. Today, the president will sign a $484 billion bill with huge bipartisan support. Meanwhile, in Europe, Lisa, they continue to argue over the path forward.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about this is that there is a feeling not of austerity, but hesitance to really just let the bazooka rip and just let money flow into all areas of Europe. And yet, as the U.S. unveils these unprecedented packages of financial aid, the dollar has not materially weakened. We haven't necessarily seen capital flight or some of the things that people have traditionally worried about when there is a rapid expansion of fiscal deficits. So there's sort of this real contrast as people say more money right now is better to just plug the gap, bridge the gap until we get to the other side.
They can't get it done in Europe, Tom. I know you've paid a lot of attention to that earlier this morning. Whether the disbursement of the funds are loans or ultimately grants, that's the key issue in Europe right now, and why we still have that fight. 10 years on, we still have that fight between the north of Europe and the south.
It's never gone away. And of course, you and I have talked to Rutte of the Netherlands many times in Davos about this. And yeah, it's intransigent. It was there with Otmar Issing and Axel Weber years ago, and nothing's really changed. But I would note, John, and this is a real deterioration in the last 10 days, and I know our guest here can really drive this forward, is the 5-year break-evens in Europe are shocking. The disinflationary tendency in Europe versus the slope in the United States is remarkable.
Let's bring in the guest, shall we? Fantastic lineup this morning on Bloomberg Surveillance. We begin the program with Alan Ruskin of Deutsche Bank. Here's a line from Alan for you. G10 central banks have expanded their collective balance sheet by $2.7 trillion, and 2/3 of this comes from one central bank alone, the Federal Reserve. Alan, fantastic to catch up with you, and brilliant research, as always, with the team over at Deutsche. Just run us through the compare and contrast right now between Europe and the US.
Well, John, I think you're absolutely right, to make the distinction not only in terms of what's going on in terms of monetary policy, but what's going on in terms of the fiscal policy. In fact, fiscal policy may be more important. But on the monetary policy side, we all knew that coming into a crisis, Europe starting off with negative rates was not going to be able to do very much, that there was a little bit more leeway from the Federal Reserve. But it didn't just stop there, really. We also knew that both central banks would get pulled into unorthodox policies, notably, expanding their balance sheets. And so far, the action has all been on the Federal Reserve side. Perhaps Europe has, not really come off the QE the way that's QE after the 2008 crisis, the way the Federal Reserve did. So the Fed, was obviously shrinking its balance sheet, now massively re-expanding its balance sheet. But, it's tended to show a few limits. We know the detail in terms of, willingness to extend out the credit structure. So the Federal Reserve, as the world's most important bank, is doing everything it can to ameliorate what is, really seen as the sharpest decline in output in modern economic history.
Pretty easy at this point, Alan. I'm sure you'd agree to identify the differences between the United States and Europe, yet pushing that view through the market is actually far more complex. Through the month of April, over the last 3-4 weeks, we've had a range on euro dollar of what? 107 out towards 110, 109. Pretty tight, narrow trading range in G10, Alan, given the differences that you see in Europe and the United States. Why?
Yeah, I think the market's a little bit befuddled in terms of just trying to ascertain, firstly, do you respond to the fact that the U.S. is policy measures have inevitably expanded debt as far as the eye can see. So I think there's a sort of a latent concern there about fiscal deficits and debt. And then I think, there are other elements there where people are considering what is the labor market response going to be like in the U.S. versus Europe. In the U.S., you're certainly seeing unemployment ticking up very, very sharply. In Europe, it perhaps is going to be a little bit slower. Is that flexibility a good or bad thing? The market's confused on that issue. And then I think the other element is just the course of this virus. I think there's certainly some concern that the U.S.'s response is going to be trickier going forward, particularly when one state, for example, opens and so shifts away from lockdowns, another state maybe doesn't, but you still have travel between two states. That sort of problem that you have in the United States, you're probably not going to have in Europe. So I think there's a multitude of different factors the market's looking at, and they've got bigger fish to fry, as it were. I think, particularly in the emerging market world, currency traders that's really seizing on trading in that space.
Well, that's right where I wanted to go, just because of time, Alan Ruskin. And to me, the single moment on this Friday is Brazil. Brazil's basically got to get to Monday. How urgent is it for Brazil to begin to solve some of their problems?
Well, it's been urgent for a long time. I think the big issue you face with Brazil and a few other emerging market countries is they came into this crisis with a fiscal problem to begin with. And there's a long history, of course, going back a long way, where central banks have been asked to effectively finance fiscal deficits. So deficits have not been necessarily that easily financed. And I think that, the history with both in terms of the long term and the short term is deeply problematic. And usually it's going to resolve itself partly in the safety valve that exists, which is the currency, and that's exactly what we're seeing.
Well, that's exactly what we're seeing, except that you would expect the dollar to weaken then. I mean, you'd expect the dollar to eventually weaken if the Federal Reserve is basically monetizing the debts of the United States, and that seems by all means what it's doing as its balance sheet expands by $2.4 trillion since the end of February. Why are we not seeing a weaker dollar?
Lisa, so let me just make a quick distinction between what I was saying earlier, which was really related to Brazil and why the Brazilian real is actually weakening. The dollar is a bit of a special case. So I think being the major global reserve currency, there's some sense there that regardless of some of the policies in the short term and perhaps even in the longer term, numerous transactions have been done, and there have been enormous balance sheet imbalances, effectively, which have resulted in liquidity-related demand for the dollar. So I think what you saw, particularly 3 or 4 weeks back, was the dollar had a natural bid because of what effectively were bank-related imbalances. We saw it particularly as it related to Japanese banks, to a lesser degree European banks as well, whereby there was extraordinary demand for dollars. And if you actually look at what the central bank has done, these swap lines to the BOJ, I think, being utilized to the extent of about 200 billion, Europe about 150 billion. So there has been a strong need for dollar liquidity globally. And without that liquidity, the dollar would have been even stronger.
Alan, always great to get your thoughts on this program. Alan Ruskin there of Deutsche Bank. I hope you and yours are doing well. Alan, thank you very much for joining us. Let's get you some news, some headlines worldwide this Friday morning. We can do that with Bloomberg's Michael Barr. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, John. Lisa, Tom. Congress has delivered a nearly $500 billion infusion of coronavirus spending, almost unanimously rushing new relief to employers and hospitals buckling under the strain of a pandemic that has claimed almost 50,000 American lives and 1 in 6 U.S. jobs. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
Today was an historic day for us to once again pass our now 4th bipartisan legislation to address the coronavirus crisis. We're very pleased with the vote, 388 to 5, passing under suspension in a recorded vote.
President Donald Trump is scheduled to sign the bill during a White House ceremony later today. Eyes will be on Georgia As it begins to reopen today, Governor Brian Kemp is allowing gyms, hair and nail salons, tattoo parlors, and bowling alleys to open for business today. Restaurants and movie theaters follow on Monday, all places where people are close to each other. For some, including President Trump, that's too close for comfort and too soon.
I want the states to open more than he does, much more than he does. But I didn't like to see spas at this early stage, nor did the doctors.
Atlanta's mayor is calling on Governor Kemp to rescind his order, saying she has serious concerns about reopening too soon. The CDC is recommending that the operators of a South Dakota meatpacking plant, where about 800 workers contracted the coronavirus, implement a strict social distancing policy. The Smithfield Foods plant in Sioux Falls has been closed indefinitely. Global news, 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts, more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. John.
Michael Barr, thank you, sir. Thank you very much. What a week ahead we've got lined up for you. I know this week isn't over just yet, but Tom, next week is absolutely massive. It starts with the BOJ on Monday. You will have Jay Powell and the Federal Reserve on Wednesday. You will also have on Wednesday Microsoft earnings. On Thursday, we'll have Christine Lagarde and the ECB decision, and you will also have on Thursday Amazon earnings. So two huge tech heavyweights on the S&P 500 next week, and all three major central banks delivering decisions too.
And for our American listeners, this is 1 week to really pay attention to the mix of European policy. I hate to say it, John, but it really matters in the terms of the optionality that Chairman Powell and others in the United States have.
Yeah, Lisa, I thought it was interesting just yesterday that Christine Lagarde tried to put the pressure on the politicians. If they haven't done anything by next week, the pressure is right back on top of the ECB to start thinking about junk in a much bigger way.
Yeah, I mean, the tepid sort of tiptoe that they took into it was just basically following the Federal Reserve, but not even necessarily going as far. And you're seeing already U.S. banks pulling away from some big European companies as far as lending to them. So a big sort of gap there that the ECB will have to bridge.
A conversation through this morning into the weekend and out into next week, a huge week ahead. Your equity markets set up as follows this Friday morning. We bounced back from a weekly loss. We could take a bite out of it at the open. We're up 0.8% on the S&P 500. From New York City this morning, good morning to you all worldwide. This
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Influential conversation.
If you want to do something important, work in adult social care,
I'm Georgia. I love social care because you never know what each day will bring. The thing that I would say to anybody that was thinking about a job in social care is go for it.
We are recruiting in your local area. We need you now, and they need you always. Care for others. Make a difference. Today. Search adult social care jobs now.
Dating can be tricky, especially when you can't meet face-to-face. So it's time to get creative with the easy way to replace physical dates, Video Call from Bumble, the dating app where women make the first move. Here's Anna Williamson and Tom Reed-Wilson with some tips on connecting online.
It's a bit harder to flirt with limited body language, but nothing beats a smile and some eye contact to show them you're interested.
And have an activity plan for your date. This will help break the ice.
Download Bumble today.
Okay, people, I've got the daily checklist. Who today has ignored a call on purpose? Tick. Talked yourself out of a workout? Tick. Spent far too long scrolling on your phone? Tick. Here's another for your list. BritBox. Streaming the BBC, ITV, Channel 5, and now Channel 4. All in one place and ad-free. So add BritBox to your list and get a 30-day free trial of the biggest box of British box sets. Search BritBox free trial. Tick. Biggest compared to other SVOD providers. Auto-renews at $5.99 a month unless cancelled. T's and C's apply.
4 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Kara in Moscow. American Express saying it'll aggressively reduce costs after provisions to cover souring loans tripled in the first quarter as the coronavirus pandemic crimps consumer spending. The credit card company said that provisions rose to $2.6 billion. HSBC says it'll need to consider what additional actions it needs to take in response to the new economic circumstances that will emerge after COVID-19. U.S. stock index futures are higher, with S&P futures up 21 points, Dow futures up 178, NASDAQ futures up 50. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. The DAX in Germany is down 0.4%. 10-year Treasury, that'll change, yield 0.60%. The yield on the 2-year 0.21%. NYMEX crude oil is up 4.6%, up 74 cents at $17.24 a barrel. COMEX gold is up 0.7% or $12.30 at $17.5770 an ounce. The euro 1.0797 against the dollar. The yen 107.58. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom, John, and Lisa.
Karen, thank you very much. There is controversy worldwide over the response to a health crisis. At least there is unity in Washington on one thing: addressing the needs of small businesses and others as well, and coming up with more money to top up that package. The path forward, though, Tom, I think gets more difficult from here. The last two aid programs had the Senate taking the lead. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi wants to take the lead on the next one.
Yeah, it'll be fascinating to see. And John, it's a conundrum in talking to Kevin Cirilli, our chief Washington correspondent, because the emotion on this Friday, folks, anecdotally from me, is no one's got their checks. Kevin, the Washington Post, I believe it is today, front runs that a major donor of the president got gazillions of dollars by hiring Trump lobbyists. Kevin, let me cut to the chase. Is the system rigged?
I think that's too. Which system? I'm stumbling because I think, I know a lot of Democrats who have lobbyists, and I know a lot of Republicans who have lobbyists, and one person's lobbyist is another person's advocate. So, I think that it's an imperfect system, but I don't think it's my job to declare whether it's rigged or not. I think as I look forward in the next couple of weeks, Tom, I have my eye on the first week of May, in particular, as Jonathan was alluding to, a much more polarizing fight that is going to emerge as folks try to negotiate through the next round of economic stimulus. And Speaker Pelosi, mind you, facing intense pressure to have this executed with much more speed than perhaps was originally planned. And Leader McConnell, for his part, finding himself, ever since he declared that states should be able to be bailed out, finding himself now in open disagreements with other Republicans, including Maryland Governor Larry Hogan, who threw some cold water on that proposition, and he chairs the National Governors Association.
So, Kevin, before we get to the next steps, let's talk about what existing programs are in place. What safeguards were implemented for the second round of the PPP, of the funding for small businesses, were put into place to allow more of it to get get to small businesses rather than publicly traded ones or those that were larger?
The media. I mean, seriously, because I've asked Republicans and Democrats that, and I haven't gotten a clear answer. I think it's just a replenishment of sorts. But the reputational risk that we've seen companies come up against because of media reports, and to some extent the administration and Democrats, top Democrats as well, openly criticizing those companies that are taking advantage of this that don't need it, has, I think, proven enough to be for people to cause to reconsider.
Kevin, let me ask the question John Farrow started with, which is simply Speaker Pelosi here has a mandate to get things going. Is she going to pull a John Boehner and be tossed out by the liberals because she's not being liberal enough?
Tom, that's such a great question.
It's Farrow's question.
Well,
it's a great question, but Farrow's texting me here, folks. Folks, the thing is, Farrow went down to Starbucks and has a Forpa latte going, so I'm asking the question. It's Farrow's great question.
Well, I have so many. I'm going to stay focused, but
please do.
The shelf life of a speaker is, not usually that long. I mean, here's someone, though, who has proven to be a Baltimore brawler in the political sense. And, but, I think, like I said, I mean, the average term of a Speaker of the House is only a couple of years. She was able to reclaim the gavel, which is fascinating and sets her apart from her predecessors in both parties. But I think what you guys are hinting at and alluding to is a really fair question. There always in the House of Representatives, no matter who is in power, is a constant behind-the-scenes struggle and jockeying and horse race for who will gain power. And you saw that play out in recent years with Republicans, but the left, the Bernie Sanders movement that spilled out from the presidential primary, I can tell you for a fact, I had a conversation with a prominent Democrat progressive on Background a couple of days ago, and what this person said to me was essentially they want to see a complete remaking of the DNC, and that includes the House of Representatives.
Kevin, just to wrap things up, myself, you, all of us, perhaps not Tom, not keen to create controversy where there isn't any, but yesterday's news conference certainly created some controversy. Dettol and Lysol have had to come out and say, under no circumstances administer into your human body. I mean, this is a problem, isn't it?
I think, yes. I think without question, Jonathan, there needs to be clear-cut messaging both on how to protect individuals for health. I mean, we've seen the wiggle room in terms of masks don't work and now masks do work. And then beyond health, I think also from an education perspective of how to take advantage of the economic tools at Americans' disposal is just as important.
Kevin, CNN had the video of the good doctor there. She's been exhausted. She is exhausted trying to lead the medical non-science of this administration. When does she resign?
I have not heard any rumblings of resignations as of now.
Kevin's ready to run away.
I know, he's already gone. Kevin, great to catch up with you. Look, Tom, I can only compare and contrast my experience. Every single day I do a radio show in London, and I do it with our good friend and colleague, Guy Johnson. I've called the cable for any listeners over in London on DAB Digital Radio.
Listen to the podcast.
5 p.m. local time. No, and every day, Tom, we take the news conference for the team over in London, for the government.
Sympathies.
Tom, it's totally different to what we experience here in the United States. There are a series of questions. If they are medical questions, they will be left to the doctors. The politicians will not weigh in. They will not weigh in on the medical situation whatsoever at all, other than telling you the latest data. That is basically it. You will not hear their views, their opinions on anything.
Lisa, I'll vamp somebody out on Twitter who said, could somebody just stand up at that lectern and actually sympathize with the people directly affected by this? The families who have older people dying, the younger people. I mean, Lisa, it's devoid of sympathy, from what I can tell.
I got to be honest, I was reading something last night describing the medical path of people dying in solitude because they're not allowed to have their families in. And this person, where the nurse actually held up a phone wearing full PPE so the family could say goodbye to their father.
Yeah.
Devastating.
Yeah,
absolutely devastating.
We're here on a Friday.
Yeah, much more still to come right here on Bloomberg Surveillance. You're listening to Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg.
business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Elite advisory firms rely on BNY Mellon's Pershing to meet the needs of their most complex clients. Karen Novak, Chief Operating Officer at Pershing Advisor Solutions, explains how.
At BNY Mellon's Pershing, we bring customized insights and strategies to help you grow your advisory business and stay on the leading edge. We can support the needs of your most sophisticated clients with a full range of investment and wealth management solutions, from access to private banking to consolidated bank and brokerage custody. Learn why so many of the largest advisory firms turn to us for the financial strength and high-touch service that BNY Mellon's Pershing can provide. Are you well positioned to stand out from your competition?
Learn more at Pershing.com or call 800-445-4467. Brokerage custody provided by Pershing LLC and other services provided by Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC. Both members of FINRA and SIPC. Private banking and bank custody provided by BNY Mellon NA. Member FDIC.
This is... If you want to do something important, work in adult social care.
I'm Greg and I lead the team at a residential care home. Supporting people to live life to the fullest. It's an amazing job to have.
We are recruiting in your local area. We need you now, and they need you always. Care for others. Make a difference. Today. Search adult social care jobs now.
Okay, people, I've got the daily checklist. Who today has eaten dinner for breakfast? Tick. Started a chore you'll never finish? Tick. Done a conference call in your pajamas? Tick. Here's another for your list. BritBox. Streaming the BBC, ITV, Channel 5 and now Channel 4. All in one place and ad-free. So add BritBox to your list and get a 30-day free trial of the biggest box of British box sets. Search BritBox free trial. Tick. Biggest compared to other SVOD providers. Auto-release at $5.99 a month unless cancelled. T's and C's apply.
Introducing the new single, Impossible. From Central American rock and blues trio, Steady Rolling. Their epic story of love and loss continues. Download and stream the single, Impossible, from the band Steady Rolling, wherever good music lives.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks to National Lottery players, communities across the country are about to benefit from up to £300 million of funding.
Thank you. Thank you.
Money that will help support the most vulnerable in these exceptional times.
Thank you. Thank you.
Food banks, local health organisations, charities combating loneliness, and thousands of other community causes will all get vital resources.
Thank you. Thank you.
And it's all thanks to you, playing the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
From New York City, this is Bloomberg Surveillance for our audience worldwide. We are live on Bloomberg Radio. We are negative on the week on the S&P 500. We are up nicely on the session, up by 0.8% on S&P 500 futures, positive 22 points. The good news in Washington, we continue to come together to put together another aid package. The president due to sign a $484 billion package a little bit later at some point today. This while the Europeans are really struggling struggling to get it together. In the bond market, yields unchanged on a 10-year, 0.599% is your yield on a 10-year maturity of the Treasury market. In foreign exchange, the pound advancing stronger by just 0.2%, the euro up by a little more than 0.1%. The data in Germany, just terrible, Tom. Business confidence absolutely plunging to a record low.
There's levels of drop, and then there's plunge. We use the word plunge, folks, carefully, and John, I totally agree. It was truly a plunge. And what's interesting there, John, is you look at Germany, their viral data ain't so good. I looked at the log glide path of cases and deaths in Germany, and it's not as bad as Brazil, it's not as bad as India. Russia's rumored to be brutal, but it's not good.
Can't say I've looked at it closely. Did look at Spain a little bit earlier this morning. Been some real problems there, improving, and I think that's good to see. Likewise in Italy as well. So on the health side of things, slowly starting to see improvements, arguably across Europe and in the United States as well. But on the economic side, I just have to re-emphasize the difference between what the United States has been able to do and what the European Union has struggled to do and will continue to struggle to do, to have a unified response to this, I think has been absolutely shocking.
Yeah, Lisa, what will the credit markets do? What will the credit markets do off of almost $500 billion stimulus?
In the United States?
Yeah, in the United States.
The feeling is that the weaker players are going to fail. I mean, you're seeing this with Hertz. They're looking around for options to not file for bankruptcy, but they're running out. And J.C. Penney looking for bankruptcy financing, an increasing number of them. And frankly, you're seeing this in spreads. You're seeing this in pricing. There are going to be a lot of bankruptcies, and I think that's why people are looking at the world after this and saying, what is it going to look like?
And many will be in oil. Let's get a larger global view on oil. He is head of commodities and derivative research, Francisco Blanch for the Bank of America. Francisco, as you write your research for the weekend, where's the most efficacious price of oil right now? I've lost track. Where's the good spot for Brent crude to be right now?
Well, I think, Thomas, as you pointed out, the economic data is so dismal that the commodities have nowhere to hide. The commodity markets provide a completely unfiltered view of the economic reality that we are facing today, which is completely unprecedented. We've never stopped the world for a few months out of a sudden, and the problem in oil markets just keeps passing from country to country. When OPEC decided to cut production a couple of weeks ago, the price of Dubai and Oman grades was lifted right into the price of Brent, but it didn't do anything to prevent WTI from trading negative at the beginning of the week. So remember that the more landlocked you are, the less access you have to infrastructure, the more difficult it is to place your crude today, and the more likely you are to have to shut in your well. And that's what we're seeing right now. We're seeing strong signals to producers to essentially cap their wells and stop flowing barrels into the pipelines.
Are they responding to that, Francisco, as far as you can see?
They if you look at the real-time data, they are not yet. The only response that we've started to see is OPEC's, although the deal doesn't really come into play until May, which of course is Friday next week. So the issue we're facing here, going back to the point that you guys were making, is you have a 30% drop in U.S. GDP, maybe more. You have a 25% drop in Japan GDP. What does that mean for oil demand? Well, it means oil demand is going to fall by about 25% this quarter. And COVID-19 is particularly harsh on oil because COVID-19 is a crisis of mobility. And oil is the fuel of transportation. So as a result, oil is the most impacted energy commodity and probably just the most impacted commodity, period. So we are seeing a very complicated situation here because even the OPEC deal, which is very large, is the largest ever. It's only 10 million barrels a day, which is about 10%. So you're still producing a lot of excess oil while we're all sitting at home, not driving and not flying. And that's really the main issue. We need to get back to work to save the oil market here.
Francisco, yesterday Mohamed El-Erian was speaking with John Farrow, And he talked about a growing cognitive dissonance in markets. I recommend you watch the interview. It was really, really interesting and stark, but it highlights that cognitive dissonance perhaps is most prevalent in the oil market, where you've got theory kind of bumping up against the physical reality where there are not enough places to store oil. And I'm wondering, the theory that demand will pick up at some point, when does that fail? I mean, how far out in the contract could we potentially see zero or negative pricing as storage facilities fill up?
Well, we got a glimpse of it this week, and prices at the end of the day in commodity markets are signals for either consumers or producers or infrastructure operators like pipeline operators or storage owners to take action. And the signal right now is that you should be buying cheap oil in the front end of the curve and storing it forward. So I don't think that forward prices are going to collapse into spot. I mean, over time they may, and they will, right? So that the curve rolls down. But it's not like the entire curve comes down immediately, because there is first of all the need to push oil into storage, and secondly there is going to be the expectation naturally that the economy is going to get back to some kind of normal at some point. And I don't know what that looks like, but when you look at the equity markets, you look at the S&P at 2,800, and you look at the fixed income markets trading, frankly, a lot better than they did in March. I guess we are all under the impression that things are going to get back to normal. That's what we were hearing from Secretary Mnuchin. That's what we're hearing from the White House. That's what we're hearing from world leaders. And maybe it doesn't happen. But in the meantime, the Fed is doing an amazing job papering things over. And that's what's keeping asset values where they are, and the governments are expanding, as you said before, their fiscal budgets to essentially send people money. The real problem we have is that we are not producing any output. So as a result, we are sending people money at a time when the economy is not really, where actual output is down 30-40%. And I think that's going to be very, very good for gold. And that's why we made a call that gold's going to go to 3,000 over the course of the next 18 months because of what's going on the monetary front and on the fiscal front. 3,000
on gold. Francisco, that's a huge call. When you make that call on the phone to clients, in communication with them, what's the huge pushback right now?
Well, I think people are a little confused about what's happening on a macro basis. I'm not getting a lot of pushback. I think people are realizing that this is a major change in the Fed's balance sheet. They're going to double the balance sheet, maybe triple the balance sheet. The last time the Fed did that, gold basically doubled in value. So, and that was during the global financial crisis. So that's why we're making this call. We think that the expansion of the Fed's balance sheet will push the ultimate safe haven up pretty dramatically here.
Francisco, we got to continue this discussion on gold. We'll do that another time. Francisco Blunt, thank you so much. Greatly appreciate it with Bank of America today. We've got much more forward, folks. And, of course, on gold, we remember Dennis Gartman yesterday talking about gold. He didn't say we'd see a double in gold, but
1733 right now.
Yeah.
1733. Massive call, Tom.
Yeah, well, we'll see. I don't know. We'll just have to see. I mean, it's just on gold. I think it's going to be very, very problematic, all in all. John, why don't you do a data check right now?
Sure. I'll get us up to speed on the price action very quickly. Equity futures shaping up as follows. We're positive 0.7% on the S&P 500. I believe we can get you to the STEM report from NJIT. Let's do that with Bob Moon.
No clock.
All right, Tom, go to the STEM without the billboard.
Good morning.
Tom, Lisa, Jonathan, good morning. Here's what's making news in science, technology, engineering, and math. Despite what the president said at last night's coronavirus briefing, citing a top administration scientist, experts want you to know, don't inject yourself with any kind of disinfectant. Emergency management officials from the state of Washington saw the need to quickly tweet that warning, contradicting President Trump, who touted the possible medical benefits of disinfectant. The Department of Homeland Security's head of science, William Bryan, had just spoken about it.
I can tell you that bleach will kill the virus in 5 minutes. Isopropyl alcohol will kill the virus in 30 seconds, and that's with no manipulation, no rubbing.
Trump was clearly intrigued, telling his coronavirus medical team to check it out, seemingly as a possible cure.
Is there a way we can do something like that?
by injection inside or almost a cleaning, because you see it gets on the lungs and it does a tremendous number of the lungs, so it'd be interesting to check that.
Medical experts were immediately alarmed, warning that bleach is toxic. Dr. John Balmes, a professor of medicine at the University of California, San Francisco, says it would be absolutely the worst thing for the lungs, and he added, it's a totally ridiculous concept. The maker of Lysol is urging people not to ingest its products. Another Homeland Security finding that ultraviolet light kills the virus prompted Trump to suggest researchers could bring the light inside the body, either through the skin or some other way. His suggestions did come with a caveat.
Maybe you can, maybe you can't. Again, I say maybe you can, maybe you can't. I'm not a doctor.
That's the Bloomberg NJIT STEM report. Tom, Lisa, John?
No, Bob Moon, thank you so much. The Bloomberg NJIT STEM report, always brought to you by New Jersey Institute of Technology. They offer an MBA that provides STEM professionals with a technology-focused experience. Learn more at njit.edu/MBA. And John, it's wonderful to hear that John Sylvia, advisor to High Frequency Economics, loves our STEM report.
Does he? Fantastic. I'm sure we'll have much more in the week ahead. Hopefully you remember to throw to it next week on Monday and Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday and Friday too. Should we get you some news and headlines worldwide? Here's Michael Barr.
John, Lisa, Tom, thank you very much. Georgia is moving ahead with its plan to reopen some non-essential businesses despite an increase in coronavirus deaths statewide. Governor Brian Kemp was one of the last state leaders to issue a stay-at-home order effective April 3rd to combat the spread of the deadly coronavirus. This week, he became one of the nation's first governors to ease those restrictions after he allowed businesses such as gyms, barbershops, hair salons, tattoo parlors, and bowling alleys to reopen today. Sabret Dupree, who is reopening her hair salon today in Marietta, says she is doing it in the safest way possible.
I feel that we have taken plenty precautions in trying to minimize the staff on the floor, trying to minimize the appointments. Services are not completely available. Every service is not completely available. And the sanitation that we have taken is very, very strong for this particular virus.
Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms called Kemp's announcement perplexing. For a state battling a virus that has killed nearly 900 residents and sickened about 22,000 others. Nationwide, the death toll is approaching 50,000, according to the Johns Hopkins University. President Trump will sign a new stimulus package today. Yesterday, Congress delivered a $480 billion infusion of coronavirus spending. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. John.
Michael, thank you. Thank you very much. If I told you 6, 7, 8 weeks ago that Washington would come together the way it has to deliver $2.5 trillion plus
Right,
in aid,
gentlemen.
I'm not sure many people would believe any of us if we told them that, but they have, and it's really encouraging. Equity futures this morning, they're positive 19 points on the S&P 500, up 0.7%. From New York this morning, good morning to you all. This is Bloomberg Surveillance, live on Bloomberg Radio.
With a Bloomberg Business of Sports report, I'm Michael Barr. Tiger Woods and Phil Mickelson are ready for a made-for-TV rematch at a time when fans are craving live action, and this time they'll have company. Turner Sports says quarterback greats Tom Brady and Peyton Manning will join them for a 2-on-2 match sometime in May. No word yet on where the match will be played. However, tournament organizers say they would work with government and health officials to meet safety and health standards. Turner said all donations and fundraising from the match Champions for Charity would benefit relief efforts for the COVID-19 pandemic. The chief executive of the Tokyo Olympics promised transparency with the Japanese public regarding the cost of postponing the games until next year. Organizers haven't said what it will cost to delay the Tokyo Games for a year, but early estimates in Japan range between $2 billion and $6 billion. And that is a Bloomberg Business of Sports report. I'm Michael Barr.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Global news 24 hours.
If you want to do something important, work in adult social care.
I'm Georgia. I love social care because you never know what each day will bring. The thing that I would say to anybody that was thinking about a job in social care is go for it.
We are recruiting in your local area. We need you now, and they need you always. Care for others. Make a difference. Today. Search adult social care jobs now.
We've never been further apart, yet somehow never closer. To support people making a difference and those local communities affected during these extraordinary times, Barclays is supporting the Big Night In appeal. We kickstarted our donation with £1 million and matched Barclays customer donations up to a total of another £1 million. So far, the appeal has raised an incredible amount. So thank you. Visit barclays.co.uk to find out more about how your donations are helping. All donations will be split between the registered charities.
Want to relive the glory of college football?
Balls over a man, into the end zone.
Come explore TuneIn's classic game replay collection to hear ESPN's complete coverage of the 2019 New Year's 6 bowl games. Don't miss your chance to re-experience the Rose Bowl, the 2020 National Championship, featuring Clemson and LSU.
There are going to be two champions on the field tomorrow night. There's going to be one team hold up the trophy.
Touchdown! Search classic game replays to listen for free.
Today at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Verizon Communications topping Wall Street earnings estimates, but it fell short of revenue expectations after COVID-19 damaged first quarter sales. The company is revising its financial forecast for the year due to the pandemic. Freeport-McMoRan, the world's biggest publicly traded copper miner, said it will slash capital expenditures by $800 million this year as the coronavirus flattens global demand. Futures are higher this morning. S&P futures up 18 points. Dow futures up 162. NASDAQ futures up 42. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. The DAX in Germany is down about 0.8%. 10-year Treasury up 1/32, yield 0.59%. The yield on the 2-year 0.21%. NYMEX crude oil up more than 2%, up 34 cents at $16.85 a barrel. COMEX gold is up about 0.8% or $13.10 at $17.5850 an ounce. The euro 1.0786 against the dollar. British pound 1.2353 and the yen 107.59. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom, John, and Lisa.
Karen, thank you. Thank you very much. Pharma company Gilead really in the news over the last week or so. In the last 24 hours, stock took a beating at one point yesterday, Tom. Closed the session lower by around about 4.5%. A little bit of controversy around some leaked data for remdesivir about whether it is good or bad at treating symptoms of coronavirus. The leaked data suggesting that the testing suggests it's been a flop, but a lot of analysts saying, hold on, we don't know yet.
Yeah, there's phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 42. The only one that understands these phases is Drew Armstrong, working with U.S. Healthcare at Bloomberg News, and he's really definitive on this stuff as well. What are these phases, Drew? I mean, what phase is Gilead in with this?
Well, actually, we're gonna do away with the phase conversation more or less entirely, because that actually is something that has been a little bit thrown out the window in this pandemic as people rush to test these drugs. But one of the things that I will say you're seeing here is incremental pieces of data from small segments of trials, or from trials in this case that were had never been able to enroll as many patients as that they would have wanted to. And based on data that's, in many ways incomplete or at least non-definitive, you're seeing just billions and billions of dollars worth of market value in Gilead change hands. And not only that, but swinging, entire large indices of stocks based on this stuff. It does feel a little bit detached from reality, but I certainly understand everybody's desire to know whether or not we're going to have a drug that is effective for treating this disease and the economic implications and social implications that come along with that.
Drew, can you talk a little bit about the challenge of getting patients who are willing to be part of some of these studies and how that challenges some of the potential results?
Yeah, one of the things that we typically see in a clinical trial, and the gold standard that you always want, is you want to randomly, let's say you have 500 patients, you want to randomly assign some portion of them, let's say half, to get either the standard of care or a placebo, and then randomly assign the other half of those folks to get the drug. And in an ideal situation, your patients and your doctors, nobody knows what they're getting except for the folks looking at the data. And the idea is that you want to perfectly isolate what is the effect of the drug. And so in a case like this, where we have most patients who do get better on their own, you can say, did the drug help them or did they just get better on their own? And a lot of these trials early on that we've seen with this drug don't have that placebo arm, which makes it really, really, really difficult for us to isolate some of these events. So when trials don't have enough patients, which is the case in this China trial, you really get very inconclusive results. I think we're operating in an environment where everybody wants to be given something, and so you're seeing a lot of what's called compassionate use of experimental therapies. In China, one of the problems was that they actually ran out of patients. The lockdown efforts there were effective to the point that by the time they got the trial started, they weren't able to recruit enough patients who were eligible for the trial to get them enrolled. This work is hard to do in a normal setting. It gets even harder to do in an effective way, in the right way, in a pandemic setting.
Drew, it's been difficult for us to understand what's been going on because most of the direction we've been getting is from reports from various publications. We had one last Friday that was encouraging. We had one from the FT yesterday that really was not. What's the guidance that's come from Gilead at this point?
I'm sure that they're frustrated by this situation because in a normal environment, researchers, whether they're sponsored by the drug company or whether they're working independently, really do want to try and control their results as much as they can before they come out. And that's not, just out of selfishness. That really genuinely is a desire to say, hey, let's slow down. Let's do this the right way. Let's take a look at the data. Let's have our peers analyze it, do that peer review process, so on and so forth. Gilead has said, we're going to get this information to you as fast as we can. They've said we see some positive signs here, potentially that you're not seeing. Those things can be, drug companies spin sometime. I think I would be a little surprised if they were trying to put a bit of a rosy polish on this in this situation. But they do seem frustrated by exactly the same dynamics.
Drew, we've got such a great respect for the way you work at this every day, the complexity here and all these long names. Yesterday we had a real estate developer from New York, and the guy from the Homeland Security's division is a logistics systems guy out of energy and military intelligence. There was nobody doing medicine on stage. Hovercraft and Sharp is a definitive inorganic textbook. Nobody up there's read it. Are you taken aback by the non-chemistry that we're getting in our chemical discussions at these press conferences?
It is certainly something to watch. We were obviously writing yesterday about the president's implication that maybe we could clean people's lungs out with bleach or
that's not funny.
Which came as something of a surprise to us, as well as some of the other folks we talked about. And I think to some of the folks who make this product, and just to be totally clear, do not do that to your listeners. That is not safe. No doctor would do that. Please do not use bleach or other household cleaning products on your body.
Let me add as well, Drew, this is so important. And folks, you can't dilute it. There's no dilute solution that's acceptable, right, Drew?
Yeah, no. I mean, we spoke to, listen, I have been covering medicine and writing about science and updating science stories for a long time. every time that I think that, oh, that sounds insane, there's no way that that's true, I often get proven wrong. So, we said, all right, just to be safe here, just because even though this sounds crazy, we called a pulmonologist who's very respected at the University of California, San Francisco last night, and they confirmed, they said, this is a ridiculous idea. Do not do this. It is not safe.
Drew, always great to get your thoughts on a programme. Thank you. Drew Armstrong there with the latest. To be fair, Tom, a very, very clumsy comment, but do remember there are doctors on that stage almost daily at every single news conference.
Dr. Birx walked off the stage yesterday.
Well, they've been walking off the stage continually to sit to the side, as has Tony Fauci.
Fair.
We'll continue the conversation into the next hour, right here from New York City. Good morning to you all, as we count you down to the final trading day of the week and look ahead to a massive week next week. Big three central banks, ECB, the Fed, the BOJ, deliver their decisions and earnings from Amazon and Microsoft. From New York, this is Bloomberg.
Hey, y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you...
The pressure washer that means your patio is barbecue ready. The 4K projector that brings the thrill of the cinema to you. The yoga mat that turns your lounge into a studio. With a choice of ways to pay, you can make the most of your leisure time. You can say yes when it matters most at very.co.uk. Goods and services provided by Shop Direct Home Shopping Limited. Credit provided by Shop Direct Finance Company Limited.
If you want to do something important, work in adult social care.
I'm Georgia. I love social care because you never know what each day will bring. The thing that I would say to anybody that was thinking about a job in social care is go for it.
We are recruiting in your local area. We need you now, and they need you always. Care for others. Make a difference. Today. Search adult social care jobs now.
Day 2 of the 2020 NFL Draft is on TuneIn.
Jets, that's going to be the hot spot for this draft early on, right? We're going to see if a team's going to try and get up into that spot and see if they want to pick one of these quarterbacks. And I'm watching to see where my guy Dwayne has.
With round 1 in the books, there are still plenty of great players on the board waiting to hear their name called.
Where's the only guy in this draft that has Aaron Donald potential? Who's going to get up and take it? And look, I'm looking at Oakland, the Raiders, and John Gruden sat there yelling at me for all those years.
Search NFL Draft to listen. Get your MLB fix with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Fill your 7th inning stretch with the Ringer MLB Show.
I just can't get over it. It's like, oh, well, Jeter Downs. Didn't realize he was a top. Like, my dad is drinking the Kool-Aid on this. He's like, of course. Mookie was going to leave. I'm like, what do you mean? You don't know that.
Slide into second with the Starting 9 podcast.
Nolan Arenado slides right into the top spot for a favorite baseball player. Active in the league right now. It is a pleasure to be sitting next to you, sir.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
This is we've been waiting a long time for this. We actually, in terms of active
Round the Bases with the StatCast podcast.
Ways of going about it. I picked third, so in some ways it made it easier for me. Mike, just to go over the first couple of picks, Mike took Barry Bonds, who I think was kind of the obvious guy to take number 1, not only.
Catch these and more MLB podcasts right here on TuneIn.
Hey, it's Jacoby here from Jalen and Jacoby. And after you watch The Last Dance on ESPN, which you're obviously going to do just like the rest of us stuck in our homes in quarantine, you can join Jalen Rose and I for Jalen and Jacoby, The After Show. And we will be joined by the director of the documentary series, Jason Eyre, to discuss each episode in detail. You can hear our after show right here on ESPN Radio on Sunday nights after the episodes air, and they'll be available on the Jalen and Jacoby podcast feed.
Search Jalen and Jacoby to listen today. Want to relive the glory of college football?
Pulls over a man into the end zone.
Come explore TuneIn's classic game replay collection to hear ESPN's complete coverage of the 2019 New Year's 6 bowl games. Don't miss your chance to re-experience the Rose Bowl, the 2020 National Championship, featuring Clemson and LSU.
There are going to be 2 champions on the field tomorrow night. There's going to be 1 team hold up the trophy.
10, plays to the 5, touchdown! Search classic game replays to listen for free.
About the losers in a trade war.
You benefit if you're just further away from China.
So that you can too.
What are the ramifications if she crumbles or doesn't crumble?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
In this cycle, we've dealt with a lot of shocks.
It's important to understand what the Fed can and cannot do.
Finance.
There's no asymmetry left in markets. It truly is a zero-sum game.
We will get slower growth. I mean, let's not get confused about that.
Investment.
Very few investors want to own any energy to begin with.
There's a great deal of uncertainty. People are trying to hide in safe places.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene, Jonathan Farrell, and Lisa Abramowitz on Bloomberg Radio.
Good morning, everyone. John Farrow, Lisa Abramowitz, and Tom Keene. We welcome you to a Friday. We try to wrap the week, as John mentioned in our previous hour, stagger forward to a central bankathon next week. So we're doing a lot of good briefing here. David Kelly to join us in moments with JP Morgan Asset Management. Bloomberg Surveillance, as always, at this hour, brought to you by Cohn Resnick. Advisory assurance tax for ideas to stabilize your business and find opportunity amid uncertainty. Visit the Cohn Resnick Coronavirus Resource Center at cohnresnick.com/COVID-19. John, to me in the central bankathon next week, I'm going to tilt away from the Fed, away from the Bank of Japan, and I'm sorry. What does Lagarde do with a choice that she's got?
A lot of pressure, Tom. We said in the previous hour, she's trying to put that pressure on the politicians to come up with a better fiscal plan that maybe shares some of the burden and takes that burden off the shoulders of the likes of Spain, the likes of Italy. If they don't get their act together in the next week or so, I think the pressure switches back to President Lagarde again, and we'll be having a conversation about junk debt in the same way that we have here in the United States.
And Lisa, the junk debt of the oil debt, it is $15, $18, $20 a barrel. I mean, does the price of oil really matter right now? We're so far below where we need to be, Lisa. Do you just assume a high-yield tragedy in oil?
That's what's being priced in, certainly. Look, it's not just where the price is, it's also the velocity of the prices. And the sort of feeling that there is no floor definitely was unsettling in a new way that caused a new wave of carnage. But going forward, I think that with the central banks, there's a key question. Just to piggyback what Francisco Blanche said, you know, this idea that gold will remain supreme as central banks around the world are basically forced to print money, regardless, whether they do it sooner or later. That's what they're going to be forced to do.
John, on our break to the hour, did you get in those gold call options that you were trying to set up there?
I didn't, but judging on the response to Francisco Blanche's call, I imagine they're quite expensive. He is looking for some big calls, though. 3,000 on gold. We're at 1734. But it's quickly become a consensus trade and one that's delivered through the year so far.
And we mentioned Dennis Gartman joining us yesterday, who's been just brilliant on gold in yen terms. I believe Mr. Blanche talking about gold in dollar terms. It's $3,000 the ounce. We need to frame up here the end of April, this historic moment we're in, and trying to stagger into May. And of course, with the pandemic, we go from May 5th to the middle of May, and many people now even beginning to talk into June. I know India is doing that as a nation. David Kelly is at JP Morgan Asset Management, and really quite good linking economics into the investment world. David, what will you think about this weekend? What will you write forward to Monday?
I'm probably going to be writing about, there's another fiscal package which has just been passed by the House, and we're adding an awful lot of government debt here. And, we've got packages that will take us through the middle of the summer, but it looks to me like we still won't have an economy that's really even on a significant road to recovery until the middle of next year. And that's an awful lot of extra government debt, and the central banks are just monetizing this debt. So it's really, what is the limit there in terms of how much debt the government can issue and how much debt the central bank will buy without actually setting up a real problem down the road?
David, there's a real willingness, I think, over the last several weeks to just discount and ignore the economic data that we've had. But the economic data that we've had, even if it has been expected, does inform you, does tell you something about how difficult the recovery will be. If you've got 26 million people applying for initial jobless claims and they're sitting there waiting for a job, how quickly do those jobs come back?
Well, I think we will get a lot of momentum in the second half of next year once we have a vaccine. The problem is just getting to that point. But once you do have a vaccine, I mean, there are ways you could do this more efficiently, because there are a lot of companies that will find it hard to restart. But there will be a huge demand for a lot of the entertainment, leisure,
services, restaurants, retail that people will be missing out on. So you'll get a lot of momentum going in the economy if you can finance the new companies that will then employ people to do these things. You can re-employ people pretty quickly. So I think the economy by 2022 will have a strong head of steam, and the unemployment rate will be coming down rapidly. But still, we've got to finance an awful lot of misery between now and then.
When you talk about financing the misery, I want to go to your point of debt monetization. Basically, this is the idea that the U.S. is selling trillions of dollars of treasuries, and the Federal Reserve is buying them all up to suppress borrowing costs and create natural demand. The balance sheet of the Fed has increased by $2.4 trillion since the end of February. What is the longer-term consequence of this if it isn't inflation and it isn't a debasement of the dollar?
Well, I mean, it's hard to debase the dollar against any other currency. I think the U.S. has got a lot of advantages because other countries are doing the same thing. The dollar has always been a sort of preferred currency, but we are running a risk. I mean, I think that the key thing that has protected us all the way through is actually income inequality, because the people who have all these IOUs aren't using them, and so you don't get aggregate demand in the economy picking up. But if you, the one thing that would cause an awful lot of problems is if we tried to maintain some sort of egalitarianism as we come out of this, if we tried to help people at the bottom and the middle, which is a very good thing to do. But if you do that, you create extra demand, and then inflation gets going. And once inflation gets going, people are going to doubt the ability of the Federal Reserve to corral that inflation and doubt the ability of the federal government to service its debt. And that's really the thing that I'm worried about.
Okay, but this is the heart of the matter, David Kelly. Do we invest now over a responsible long-term horizon for disinflation or inflation? To me, that's a huge conundrum.
Yeah, I think for the long run, you bet on inflation. We first of all, I'm not sure how much disinflation we're going to get in this huge recession, because there's so much constraint on supply also. And so it's usually when you have in the Great Depression, you had huge excess supply that all these people who wanted to work all the stuff that people want to sell. But now we don't. We've got a supply shortage as well as a demand shortage. But when we come out of this, we're going to have so much debt and so much demand. Pent-up demand. I mean, the savings rate is one of the things we're going to see over the next few quarters is a huge increase in the savings rate. When you push that demand into an economy with a limited supply, you could get inflation. And the whole, everything that we've done in terms of ballooning government deficits around the world has all been possible only because of low inflation and low interest rates.
Yeah, okay, great. But that tells me I want to buy stocks. Right now, we're only buying 8 stocks out there. John mentioned we've got Amazon coming out next week on earnings, Microsoft, and the other glory stocks. What do you tell J.P. Morgan asset management clients who go, I just want to buy 8 stocks?
Well, no, don't be diversified, because you don't know what the next thing that's going to get you is. I mean, if we roll the tape back 6 months ago, and you asked me, as you do, what are the things that you're really worried about next year? I wouldn't have put pandemic down as my number one risk, but that's the whole point. So you don't own just 8 stocks because you might be owning stocks in the one sector that's going to get whacked by whatever it is that's next around the corner. You diversified, and frankly, most of the U.S. stock market is not actually being impacted that much by this. It's the U.S. economy that's being impacted. But if you look broadly at technology, at healthcare, utilities, consumer staples, there are a lot of companies that can actually ride this one out pretty well. So I think there are plenty of opportunities out there. And also international stocks, by the way, are cheaper than U.S. stocks. And East Asia is going to come out of this thing faster than the United States. So I think there are plenty of opportunities around the stock market, around the world, if you want to buy equities to protect yourself against inflation in the long run.
David, I'm struggling to understand what you said, the idea that if the middle class benefits from this package of fiscal support, that's going to create inflation that's going to somehow be negative. Why isn't that a good thing in the sense that we're going to end up being able to sort of bail out some of the debts and get the economy kind of to reset a little bit before we move forward?
Well, first of all, the financial problem is only in the recovery when we come roaring back in the second half of 2021. I want to make that clear. And also, it is a very good thing we've got a very unequal society. I'd much rather live in a society which was more equal. But the key thing is that we have avoided inflation all the way to this point here, through that long expansion, because the economy was actually getting less equal. And more money was going to people who were richer who wouldn't spend it. And the thing is that if you finally give money to people who are lower income people or middle income people who are really need the money and will spend the money, then you get that excess demand. I'm not saying it's a bad thing socially. It's just if you're going to do that, you're going to have to find some way of being disciplined enough to tax money off richer people to try to prevent demand from soaring above available supply, because that's what gives you inflation. And as I said, this whole debt pyramid can only be supported if we have low inflation. That's really central to everything here.
Okay, and basically this is sort of borne out by the data. Michelle Meyer of Bank of America saying the stimulus checks so far have gone to buying more things, more consumption. I am curious, though, if you walk through what happens, why it becomes such a problem to have the inflation that you're talking about.
Well, because right now, we're going to come out of this. We went into this with the government debt at about 80% of GDP. We're going to come out of it with the debt at 100% of GDP, which is the highest since just after World War II. That's not a problem if you're financing at interest rates of 1%. But if you have higher inflation, you could be financing at 5%. So if you're at 5% on the debt, that's 5% of GDP just going to interest payments. Now, government spending is about 20% of GDP. So you're using a quarter of government spending just making interest payments on the debt. That's going to squeeze everything else. And people are going to wonder, is there some threat that the government won't be able to make these payments at some stage?
These are some huge themes for the next year into even 2 years as well, folks. David Kelly, thank you so much with JP Morgan Asset Management. And now on this Friday, with the news in New York City, here's Michael Barr.
Tom, Lisa, John, thank you very much. President Donald Trump will be holding a signing ceremony today for a bill providing a nearly $500 billion infusion of coronavirus spending. It's aimed at rushing new relief to employers and hospitals buckling under the strain of a pandemic that has claimed almost 50,000 American lives and 1 in 6 U.S. jobs. President Trump is suggesting another unproven treatment for COVID-19 that's alarming health experts. Bloomberg's Martin DeCaro reports.
During the daily White House briefing, the president turned to Dr. Deborah Birx, a lead voice on the coronavirus task force, to ask whether sunlight could be used to kill the infection in the human body.
Deborah, have you ever heard of that, the heat and the light relative to certain viruses? Yes, but relative to this virus?
Not as a treatment.
Trump also wondered aloud whether disinfectants could be injected into the body. Public health experts are now warning Americans not to listen to the president's suggestions because exposing yourself to ultraviolet light or ingesting chemicals is very dangerous. In Washington, Martin DeCaro, Bloomberg Radio.
The World Health Organization is warning that the battle against malaria in sub-Saharan Africa could be set back by 20 years as countries focus energy and resources on containing the coronavirus. The WHO says new predictions indicate that in a worst-case scenario, more than 769,000 people could die of malaria in sub-Saharan Africa this year. Global news, 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, John.
Michael Barr, sir, thank you very much. Your news, your headlines worldwide with Michael Barr there. Here's your price action this Friday morning. The S&P 500 coming into Friday down by 2.67% on the S&P. Worst week potentially since late March. We could take a bite out of those losses, though. Gains on the screen right now. We're positive just off session highs, up by 0.5% on the S&P. Positive 14 points in the bond market. Treasuries as follows. Yields down not even a single basis point to 0.5995%. And in foreign exchange, your euro against the dollar. The euro advancing 0.16%. From New York, this is Bloomberg Surveillance, live on Bloomberg Radio.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we
understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/C's change.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Influential conversations from Bloomberg.
Oh, just there, Dave. Smashing. Great. Really? Night, Steve. Yeah, see ya. Built to take the big knocks. Samsung rugged devices. Easy to use, hard to break. Explore the Samsung Rugged range.
If you want to do something important, work in adult social care.
I'm Greg and I lead the team at a residential care home. Supporting people to live life to the fullest. It's an amazing job to have.
We are recruiting in your local area. We need you now, and they need you always. Care for others. Make a difference. Today. Search adult social care jobs now.
Dating can be tricky, especially when you can't meet face-to-face. So it's time to get creative. With the easy way to replace physical dates, Video Call from Bumble, the dating app where women make the first move. Here's Anna Williamson and Tom Reed-Wilson with some tips on connecting online.
It's a bit harder to flirt with limited body language, but nothing beats a smile and some eye contact to show them you're interested.
And have an activity plan for your date. This will help break the ice.
Download Bumble today.
Breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow, and U.S. stock index futures are higher this morning as investors assess the latest virus numbers and fresh stimulus measures to limit the economic hit from the coronavirus pandemic. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures are up 15 points, Dow futures up 133, NASDAQ futures up 29. The DAX in Germany is down 0.7%. 10-year Treasury up 132nd, yield 0.59%. The yield on the 2-year 0.21%. NYMEX crude oil is up 3.6% or 61 cents at $17.10 a barrel. COMEX gold is up 0.8% or $13.50 at $17.5880 an ounce. The euro 1.0796 against the dollar. British pound 1.2345 and the yen is at 107.61. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom, John, and Lisa.
Karen, thank you very much. It's hard not to overstate this. The response to the last crisis set the stage for the next decade. And America's response to the last crisis was so far superior than what Europe delivered, that what we saw over the next 10 years was largely, easily traced back just to that moment, Tom. The banks in the United States were better capitalized, we got through this quicker in America, and Europe just stumbled, bumped along from one crisis to another. And a huge risk is something that we confront right now, that this plays out all over again, that Europe doesn't get its act together, and America does.
Absolutely, and maybe you sum up all the different programs right now up to $2.5–3 trillion. I don't know where it is, but the answer, John, is it's nowhere near the shock to the system. Joining us right now, Leslie Vinci-Murray of Chatham House in London with a wonderful perspective on the American experiment. Leslie, I look at what we're seeing, and I just take the rule of thumb. You look at the drop in the economy and maybe the expansion of the unemployment rate. You do some fancy geometry and use some fancy words, and you just port that right over to the size of the stimulus. Am I right that the size of stimulus we're heading towards could be as much as 5 or 6 trillion in a $17 trillion economy?
It is extraordinary, Tom. I mean, we've already had the fourth stimulus package. We're at $3 trillion now, and the big question is how long does this economic crisis run? And it has everything to do with our ability to tackle the health crisis. So it's difficult to predict the numbers until we know how we're going to do on that front, how we're going to do on testing, when we can reopen the economy. And that's really, that is the key question that's going to drive the size of that stimulus. But at the moment, it looks like we are headed towards ongoing stimulus packages that are just absolutely critical because the economy has been shut down.
Leslie, so far, so good. I've been really impressed by how well Secretary Mnuchin appears to be working with the Democrats to get things done quickly as well over the last month, 6 weeks. Nancy Pelosi, House Speaker, would like to lead the next effort. And I just wonder if that's the moment where we bump into a little bit of tension, some division between Democrats and Republicans.
Look, there's a lot of division already. It is, as you said, it's been remarkably bipartisan in terms of the support. The Democrats have had a number of wins that they wanted in terms of oversight and any number of things. And as we get closer to the elections towards November, once we get to the summer, that partisanship is going to really drive a number of things. But I think the scale of the crisis has, really been something that's, at least in terms of the economic response, brought people together. Now we're seeing something very, very different when it comes to dealing with the health crisis, where opinion varies, where the states are battling it out with the government, the federal government. But I think, one way or the other, we're going to have to see Congress pulling together with Mnuchin and driving this response forward, because as we've seen, we're looking at unemployment being possibly as high as 30% by the summer.
Leslie, to John's point, as he set this segment up, where he was talking about how the fiscal response and the monetary response set the decade since the 2008 crisis in the U.S. emerged more quickly. Is the size of the package appropriate that we have seen so far out of the United States? How big would be appropriate given the magnitude of the shock?
In the U.S.?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, again, to go back to my original point, it's very hard to put a number on it until we see how long we're going to have state after state after state shuttered, with small businesses closed, corporates, dialing back because they're working from home, things getting slowed down. Until we see the curve of deaths coming down, the hospital capacity being able to confront that health crisis, until we know when states are going to reopen, when the economy is going to be reopened, we can't put a number on it. We can't put a ceiling on it.
Leslie, I want to switch gears here. Let's pretend there's no pandemic right now. Buried in the Washington Post this morning is a tiny little article claiming that Vice President Biden is leading the president in this poll or that. And then there's a modest silence. But Secretary Clinton was doing better at this time versus the president long ago and far away. How is the vice president doing? How is Vice President Biden doing?
Well, we are seeing those numbers, and we're seeing, especially in Americans age 50 and over, that the preference for Biden is really much stronger than the preference for President Trump. But it's a long time out, and as we know, the Vice President Biden is an incredibly difficult climate. The President of the United States has a opportunity every single night to demonstrate, his leadership and have Americans assess that on national television. Biden is not getting that airtime. He's having difficulty getting into the public debate. So it's an uphill battle.
Leslie, thank you so much. Leslie Vinci-Murray with with Chatham House in London. Greatly appreciate that this morning. John, I was going to say something smart about disinfectant, but it's not funny. You mentioned earlier Lysol and the rest of them having to come out very aggressively and talk about this. Again, folks, you can't dilute bleach. You just can't do it. It doesn't work.
A series of statements coming out from Lysol and Dettol as well. Tom, looking ahead to 2020, I think Mr. Biden, former vice president, is in a really, really difficult spot ahead of 2020 at the moment. Struggling to resonate with the public at this point because the American president at the moment has the stage front and center every single afternoon.
Where are we on the conventions? I haven't even read that right now, but I think...
Aren't we doing virtual conventions?
We're doing virtual conventions. Definitely for the Democrats. I don't know if the Republicans have come out yet.
So what do you do, have a virtual cigar?
If you want to. Is that what you're hoping reopens, Tom? The cigar...
It's smoke-filled rooms,
cigar store. Is the cigar store closed or is it open? Is it open?
Oh, no, we are very closed.
We're very closed.
Yes, we're very...
Have you spoken to the individuals that run said cigar store?
No, I have not. I don't.
You haven't reached out?
Sway. Lisa has that one. She has her party. She has sway on that.
Yeah,
Lisa goes with you for a cigar
all the time. Me and Tom in the cigar store.
I've seen Tom stumble out of the cigar store once before.
Or you have.
Because you can have a drink in there too. Worth
occasionally.
Equity futures up 19. We're positive 0.7%. From New York this Friday morning.
So much trouble.
Great to be with you all. Looking ahead to a big weekend. And a happy weekend, I hope, for many of you too. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong. Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing, LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute.
The football boots that will help her score her first hat-trick. The tech that keeps you connected. The cozy jumpers that are perfect for snuggling up together. With a choice of ways to pay, you can make the most of family time. You can say yes when it matters most at very.co.uk. Goods and services provided by Shop Direct Home Shopping Limited. Credit provided by Shop Direct Finance Company Limited.
If you want to do something important, work in adult social care.
I'm Greg and I lead the team at a residential care home. Supporting people to live life to the fullest. It's an amazing job to have.
We are recruiting in your local area. We need you now, and they need you always. Care for others. Make a difference. Today. Search adult social care jobs now.
Dating, can be tricky, especially when you can't meet face to face. So it's time to get creative with the easy way to replace physical dates, video call from Bumble, the dating app where women make the first move. Here's Anna Williamson and Tom Reed-Wilson with some tips on connecting online.
It's a bit harder to flirt with limited body language, but nothing beats a smile and some eye contact to show them you're interested.
And have an activity plan for your date. This will help break the ice.
Download Bumble today.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
From New York City, this is Bloomberg Surveillance for our audience worldwide. We're live on Bloomberg Radio. Equity futures up by 0.7% on the S&P 500. Some economic data in America. Here's Vinny Dajudice.
Hello, John. Factory orders for durable goods down 14.4% in March, but below the numbers, not quite as bad. Excluding transportation, down 0.2%. Figures on business investment mixed. Of course, that's then. This is now. Forward-looking indicators signaling weakness in manufacturing. Thursday, the Kansas City Fed's factory index for April posted a record decline. Coming up today, 10 a.m. Wall Street time, University of Michigan Consumer Sentiment Index, a record drop anticipated again. Factory orders for durable goods for March, down 14.4%. Let's try ending on a bright note. I understand Tom Keene is regrowing his ponytail, going to do the Woodstock look.
How did you know that, Vinny?
Huh?
How did you know that?
Well, word gets around. All the old hippies.
All right. Vinny Dajudice there on Tom's latest hairstyle. Tom, you got a comment on that? Are you regrowing the ponytail?
I don't know. No, I'm not going to. No, we're trying to relive our youth. What I have been doing here, before we get to our good guests and lots to talk about the economy, is Afterthought introduced me to 90-Day Fiancé. It's a beautiful piece of drama.
90-Day Fiancé.
Yeah, I've seen that show.
Glad somebody has. I had to put up
What is 90-Day Fiancé?
It's what kids are watching, John. You try to bond with your children at home. Francine Lacroix watched Home Alone 42 times in the last 3 weeks.
Is someone going to tell me what?
It's basically
90-Day Fiancé is.
It's basically that people haven't met the person, or they've met the person briefly that lives overseas, and then they have to live together for 90 days and decide whether or not they're going to get married.
Is this what's the difference between this and Love is Blind on Netflix?
I haven't seen that.
Or Love Island, for that matter.
We're going to talk about economic data, yes?
You hope.
Yes, we are.
Let's talk about economic data.
Folks, we hope, folks, that you are enjoying the quarantine. We're now 5 and into the 6th week. And within the seriousness of it, some of the stories emanating from homes are extraordinary. Right now, I need badly, I'm going to be selfish here, John and Lisa, I need a recalibration of what the actual forecast is. And we can do that with the house of BNP Paribas. They were brilliant 10 years ago in taking a more cautious view on American economic growth. And Dan On joins us right now, their chief U.S. economist. Dan, I want you to state what's going to be real GDP 3 months forward, 1 year forward, and then go out from there.
Oh gosh! Well, glad to be here, and indeed, it's we are constantly kind of peering into a cloudier than usual crystal ball to try and see what's happening. But our latest forecast, we have growth collapsing a pretty miserable 5.7% this year, and then rebounding, but at a more anemic 4.9% compared to some of our peers. We are definitely seeing a U-shape, and we don't really see the economy go back to pre-crisis levels until the very end of 2021. So it's a very long. There is a light at the end of the tunnel, but it's going to be a very long one in our view.
So yesterday we were speaking with Frances Donald of Manulife, and she said that the market is currently pricing in that U-shaped recovery. What it is not pricing in is a W-shaped recovery, the fact that we may get a resurgence in virus cases in the fall that sends the economy back down to this miserable spiral that we see in the economic data right now. What is the risk that occurs and that we end up with a great deal more of carnage and destruction than people are currently evaluating?
I think the risk is quite high, and especially if we don't manage to get the kind of contact testing and tracing infrastructure in place, which is obviously very challenging for a country as large and as decentralized as ours. But even in super centralized places like China, we're hearing reports of a second wave of cases occurring in the Northeast, in Harbin and other places. So, I think the risk is of a second wave is substantial if we're not very careful about how we're going to relax the social distancing measures.
So, Dan, put your markets hat on. What's the markets call?
So I think the markets are actually still pricing in a bit of a V shape. I mean, we can quibble about what exactly is a V versus a U or so on, and certainly they can take comfort in the pretty unprecedented policy responses from both Congress and the Fed. But that said, the earnings expectations downgrades that we're seeing, we don't think are commensurate with the degree of the economic pain. We're talking about a Great Depression here, substantially worse than not only the Great Recession, but at least the early part of the Great Depression. I don't think ultimately this is going to last 9 years like the Great Depression did, but nevertheless, it has been pretty eye-popping in the speed of the collapse. And that all this policy response is just helping staunch the bleeding, but there's going to be a lot of scarring in the economy as millions of workers out of work start pulling back, not just on spending on hotels and flights and on dining out, but on all the other things that drive our economy.
Dan, that's exactly where I wanted to go, this idea that investors are putting their faith in the Fed and the fiscal stimulus or bailout money that we've been seeing and not necessarily looking at the fundamentals right now because they're so bad, so as to cause what Mohamed El-Erian called yesterday with John Farrow, cognitive dissonance. I'm just wondering, given what you're expecting, when do we next see highs in U.S. equities? I mean, basically, how long will it take to get back to where we were in January?
That's a very good question. One of my colleagues actually did a study where he tried to look at the timing of stock market lows, but also rebounds. In our base case, we don't see the equity market return to its pre-crisis highs for about a year. And this is actually just taking the median kind of length of time it takes for the stock market to recover during recessions. But this is just a kind of median recessions and not the really bad one that we're seeing here.
Yeah. Where does all this stimulus go in the core GDP equation? Does it just wander over to consumption, or is it part of the G coefficient?
Well, so obviously it's going to be a mix. So when we say things like the CARES Act is 2.2 or 2.3 trillion, that's just a really back of the envelope way of adding up a bunch of things, including actual government spending and appropriations, which is going to show up in G, the transfers to households, that's going to show up in C, things like deliveries, credits to businesses, which is actually, you can almost argue, trying to prop up I and Y.
Right.
Actually, so.
Okay. Well, that's too much thinking for Friday. But what we can say, Daniel, it's really important is there's a multiplier effect here. Is there going to be a consumer pop over all that money? What's the history tell us about what people do and small businesses do when they get aid checks?
Yeah, so that's another great point. What happens in recessions is that consumers retrench and their savings rates tend to go up. Now it goes up less for people in the lower end of the income distribution and for smaller businesses that are pretty much surviving paycheck to paycheck, since obviously they have to use it to spend on necessities like food and rent and utilities and so on. But as I'm sure you guys are also tracking, there's been, it's not so much the size of the stimulus that bothers me as much as the distribution of it. It doesn't seem to have gone as much to the most needful firms, and that's going to lessen the multiplier effect as well.
Dan, always great to get your thoughts on the programme. Dan Arne there of BNP Paribas, the chief US economist and head of Markets 360 America. Let's get you some news, some headlines worldwide. We can do that this morning, as always, with Michael Barr. Hey, Michael.
Good morning, John, Lisa, Tom. Georgia's governor has called for partial reopening of the state today, saying some shops like barbers and hair salons can reopen. However, many are calling that plan premature. Among the critics, President Trump and Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms. She told ABC's Good Morning America today her city has developed programs to help citizens remain safe.
Those are the things that we need to be thinking about as leaders and being creative with our budgets to find ways to allow people to feel comfortable staying at home. But to open up our state today is irresponsible.
Experiments with coronavirus samples indicate that the virus does not do well under sunlight, in warm temperatures, or in humid conditions. Bill Bryan, a senior science official at the Department of Homeland Security.
Our most striking observation to date is the powerful effect that solar light appears to have on killing the virus, both surfaces and in the air.
Spain has reported for the first time since the beginning of its coronavirus outbreak that more people are being diagnosed as cured than those falling sick. Almost 2,800 new infections were confirmed today, while about 3,100 people overcame the infection. A Canadian police official says the country's worst mass shooting started as a domestic dispute between the gunman and his girlfriend who survived the attack. AP reports the official confirmed that the weekend rampage erupted after an argument between the pair. The official who spoke on condition of anonymity said more details will be provided at a news conference today. The suspect, Gabriel Wertman, was shot to death Sunday morning about 13 hours after the attacks began. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. John, Lisa, Tom.
Michael Barr, sir, thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed. Before I run away to get ready for TV, guys, let's look ahead to next week. If I could tell you, you can have the central bank decisions, all the outcomes, the transcripts from the news conferences, all of that, or you could have the Amazon numbers and the guidance from them, if they do indeed give us any, on Thursday, and the Microsoft numbers on Wednesday. What would you take, the corporate news next week, Tom, or the central bank news?
Oh, no, the central bank news, still front and center. I mean, the corporate news would be great, but the central bank news, I mean, they don't have an option here. I mean, these numbers that we're seeing are stunning. And it's going to be trillions of dollars.
There is division on Bloomberg surveillance. Lisa Abramovich disagrees.
Yes, I disagree. I think they're the corporate numbers, because I think that they're going to have the best visibility into the staying power of consumer spending going forward. This is where it's going, right? So to this degree that they have any visibility in how much momentum there is there, how much of the supply chains they're going to potentially move or not, the shift to the cloud, the potential job opportunities there, that's going to be the future of the economy. To me, that's what I'm looking for. The central banks, they're stuck between a rock and a hard place. They're going to have to put more money in. But it's the companies. Yes, go ahead, Tom.
Can I give you some anecdotal?
Please.
All I know is I'm seeing streaming bills for 90 Day Fiancé.
Oh, my
and
God.
I'm getting, there's makeup
You get a
in
streaming
boxes.
bill for that. What have you got dial-up? 25 years ago. Why are you getting a bill for that?
That's ridiculous.
I got
You
makeup
clearly
in
don't
boxes.
pay the bill.
I have makeup in Amazon boxes coming in.
I'm getting out
Not
of here.
your mother's.
Hey, Tom.
Our brand is not
Tom,
your mother's.
Have a good weekend. All right,
You too,
Lisa.
I'll be
All right.
listening to the weekend.
Good to be with you all. Equity futures are positive. 47 minutes away from the opening bell. We're up 0.9% of the S&P 500. The coverage continues here on Bloomberg Surveillance. I'll give you a 90-day fiancé. This is Bloomberg.
I had one.
This is your Bloomberg Real Estate Report. I'm Denise Pellegrini. Even though those March home sales plunged, hope springs eternal, and the housing market may be showing some early signs of springing back to life after online home sales dipped dramatically last month and hit a bottom around March 22nd across the country. People are apparently checking out a lot of properties online again.
We have since seen traffic on for sale homes come above and beyond last year's level.
Skylar Olson, economist at Zillow.
We're at 18% higher, by April 15th than last year at this time.
And requests to be connected to Zillow agents have also ticked up. And Olson says Dallas, Houston, Phoenix, Denver, and Las Vegas are among the places where online searches jumped the most recently. But she says searches still do remain lower than a year ago in some places, including New York, Boston, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and Detroit. And that's your Bloomberg Real Estate Report. I'm Denise Pellegrini.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Connecting decisions.
I can find and fund my car, from a Mini to a Jaguar.
Feel good car buying from findandfundmycar.com is the place where you can find quality used cars from trusted dealers rated by you, and where you can fund your car with finance to fit your budget. It's feel good car buying all in one place.
Shouldn't be a carry on, choose findandfundmycar.com.
If you want to do something important, work in adult social care.
I'm Georgia. I love social care because you never know what each day will bring. The thing that I would say to anybody that was thinking about a job in social care is go for it.
We are recruiting in your local area. We need you now, and they need you always. Care for others. Make a difference. Today. Search adult social care jobs now.
Dating can be tricky, especially when you can't meet face to face. So it's time to get creative with the easy way to replace physical dates, video call from Bumble, the dating app where women make the first move. Here's Anna Williamson and Tom Reed-Wilson with some tips on connecting online.
It's a bit harder to flirt with limited body language, but nothing beats a smile and some eye contact to show them you're interested.
And have an activity plan for your date. This will help break the ice.
Download Bumble today.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow watching this headline crossing the Bloomberg. Amazon loses a French court fight to sell non-essential items. And we'll continue to watch those headlines as they cross the Bloomberg. U.S. orders for durable goods declining in March, but since 2014 as the coronavirus and slumping oil prices reverberated through the manufacturing sector. Bookings for goods meant to last at least 3 years dropped 14.4% after rising a revised 1.1% in February. Futures are higher. S&P futures, they're up about 29 points. Dow futures up 223. NASDAQ futures up 70. The DAX in Germany's down 1/3%. 10-year Treasury down 4/30 seconds. Yield 0.61%. Yield on the 2-year 0.21%. NYMEX crude oil is up 5%, up 83 cents at $17.32 a barrel. COMEX gold up 0.6% or $11 at $17.5640 an ounce. The euro 1.0805 against the dollar. British pound 1.2357, and the yen is at 107.61. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Lisa.
Bloomberg Opinion, informed perspectives, and expert data-driven commentary on breaking news.
Good morning, everyone. Bloomberg Surveillance, Lisa Abramowitz and Tom Keenan. We welcome all of you. Right now, an extremely important moment as we try to touch upon the different themes of this pandemic. And this goes back to World War II. The gentleman's name was Geoffrey Tovey, Tovey. He was very British, and he single-handedly invented a thing called serology, S-E-R-O, serology. And what that is about is manipulating the blood and the blood plasma, and in the case of viruses, in the case of pandemics, moving towards an antibody study to try to figure out who has had it, who has not. Bloomberg Opinions' Fernando Giuliano has done a phenomenal essay this morning on this incredibly important and timely topic. Fernando, thank you so much for joining us. I will distribute all weekend your important essay. Can we actually move forward our hope through the study of serology, a method from World War II and another time and place?
Is Fernando there?
I guess we have some technical difficulties. Okay, Fernando, are you there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
good morning. Good morning.
Yes.
Can we really move forward our level of hope as we await a vaccine with serology from another time and place?
Well, so I was saying it depends on what our hope is. So if our hope is to try and understand better the dynamic of the outbreak, I think serology is very important because it will tell us who has had this virus, who's been affected without even knowing. And we know that, a large percentage of the population, according to a study, up to 40% of the people who are infected don't even notice it because they have no symptoms. And so it can help us. And it will also lower this impression that COVID kills, 10% of the people who are infected, which is what you would guess if you just looked at the raw numbers are going around these days. I think for the world population is around 7%. Where it does not help us is in this idea that we've somewhat reached this thing called herd immunity, which is what we all hope for, i.e. a situation where enough people have been infected that those who haven't been infected are protected by everyone else, just because the virus gets stopped by all these people who have already been infected. I don't think we're there yet, and thinking that we are near that point is absolutely a false illusion.
All right, this is crucial because people have been talking about immunity certificates or immunity passports that kind of harken to the dystopian worlds that we read about, where you basically have to put your finger on something to decide whether you're clean or not clean. The question is, what is the data? How conclusive is it in terms of reinfection rates for people who have been exposed to the virus and develop antibodies?
Well, the data is not conclusive on this for a simple reason. This virus has been with us, with the human race, for a few months. So even if we have data on the very first person who was infected, people say around December in China, we would only know, and even assuming that this person is immune, we would only know that you can be immune for 4.5 months. That's the most we can get. And obviously 4.5 months is not what we hope for at the moment. So there is this one factor. And the second factor is that we just don't know how strong this protection really is.
Fernando, with your phenomenal article, can you summarize, and folks, I want to point out that Michael Bloomberg is working with Governor Cuomo on a project for New York City, again, just to figure out who has what. Fernando, do you have within serology and antibody testing within Europe any hope of what percentage of people they will discover have it and do not have it, say 6 months out or a year out?
Well, what we know is something, data up until a few weeks ago, and they show that indeed it's, more than we thought, but nowhere near the 60% level which people talk about when they talk about herd immunity. Yeah. So we have a study in Germany in a very affected area, which stands around, between 10 and 15%. Lombardy, the Italian region where I live, again, very infected by the virus. Again, we're looking at 10-15%. But again, if you look at a country like Italy, it's most likely that the south of the country, where the virus really hasn't killed many people, but people are talking at low single-digit number of people who will be found out. So, for the country as a whole, probably less than 10%, maybe 10%.
Exactly. Well said. And it goes nowhere near herd immunity hurdle rates. I mean, there's no
correct.
way to
And we
put
saw
it.
the same in New York. I mean, the data from Governor Cuomo yesterday showed 20% for New York City, 13% around for the state as a whole. Again, it's a big number compared to the number we see just out of testing people, but it's nowhere big enough to talk about herd immunity.
Yeah, exactly. Ferdinando, thank you so much. Congratulations on a really social good essay, just a superb essay for Bloomberg Opinion. Ferdinando Giuliano. Lisa, I find it fascinating as well, and it just shows, this goes back literally to polio in the early 1950s, just the desperation to get to a vaccine, which is out there, isn't it?
Desperation is the word. You know what I find fascinating? That you've studied pretty much everything. You've been a musician. You've been a virologist. Didn't you study medicine? Weren't you become a doctor?
I am thrilled to say that my degree is in biology, and I had a privileged undergraduate microbiology work at Colorado Engineering and then at the Rochester Institute of Technology. I was actually published, Lisa, when I was 20 years old. It was a footnote. I'm not going to make a big deal about it, but I look back now, and it was a miracle what I was able to do with a lot of great faculty.
Important perspective at this time.
Yeah. We will continue here, possibly, on economics, finance, and investment. Lisa Bramowitz and Tom Keene. Paul Sweeney coming up. Take care. This is Bloomberg.
Vatsal Shah, a senior project.
If you want to do something important, work in adult social care.
I'm Georgia. I love social care because you never know what each day will bring. The thing that I would say to anybody that was thinking about a job in social care is go for it.
We are recruiting in your local area. We need you now, and they need you always. Care for others. Make a difference. Today. Search adult social care jobs now.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks to National Lottery players, communities across the country are about to benefit from up to £300 million of funding.
Thank you. Thank you.
Money that will help support the most vulnerable in these exceptional times.
Thank you. Thank you.
Food banks, local health organisations, charities combating loneliness, and thousands of other community causes will all get vital resources.
Thank you. Thank you.
And it's all thanks to you, playing the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen.
Hey, it's Jacoby here from Jalen and Jacoby. And after you watch The Last Dance on ESPN, which you're obviously going to do just like the rest of us stuck in our homes in quarantine, you can join Jalen Rose and I for Jalen and Jacoby, The After Show. And we will be joined by the director of the documentary series, Jason Eyre, to discuss each episode in detail. You can hear our after show right here on ESPN Radio on Sunday nights after the episodes air. And they'll be available on the Jalen and Jacoby podcast feed.
Search Jalen and Jacoby to listen today.
With the NHL season temporarily on ice, now is a good time to catch up on past games. With Game Replay on TuneIn, you can hear every matchup of the 2019-2020 season so far. And for a limited time, it's free for hockey fans everywhere. Search classic Game Replays to start listening. Not all heroes wear capes, but most wear tights. Keep up with everything happening in the wild world of pro wrestling with a podcast on TuneIn. For expert analysis of the latest wrestling storylines, turn on the WWE podcast.
Big Steve edition.
Or listen to the Steve Austin Show for no-holds-barred conversations with wrestling's biggest personalities.
Because now on the show, everybody's kind of the same size, but as soon as I saw you, it's been...
For these and more, search sports and scroll down to the world of wrestling.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
I'm Mel Kiper Jr., and to get you ready for the NFL Draft, you can listen to my podcast, First Draft, as Todd McShay, Chris Sproul, and I highlight all the top picks and give you the analysis you need leading up to the draft. Just search ESPN Radio today.
Be part of the sports conversation with Sports Talk Radio on TuneIn. Join the discussion around your favorite local teams with sports stations broadcasting in your
The game
area.
will be 185 to 183, and somebody wins, whatever. Football, it's either full go or it's not. You got it's thud. I can practice what they call
Follow
thud.
national storylines and debates with ESPN Radio.
Does the NBA have a hiring problem when it comes to front office jobs in the leagues and a minority hiring issue? Stephen A. chimed in on that today on First Take.
It also resonates with me. Max, you can appreciate this position. One of the candidates was Brian Colangelo. We know what happened. I like Brian, but we know...
And hear what's happening worldwide with international channels like Talk Sport.
Seems as I'm sort of doing my life in reverse at the moment. I was on cricket tours when I was 20 years old, and now I'm 31. I'm sat at home injured playing PlayStation. So it's a tournament basically where you create your own character.
In your backyard and around the globe. Keep your finger on the pulse of the sports world with TuneIn.
A trade war. You benefit if you're just further away from China.
So that you can too.
What are the ramifications if she crumbles or doesn't crumble?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
Once we get through coronavirus, it's very supportive and very stimulative.
Central banks themselves got caught hostage by markets.
Finance.
OPEC Plus is at war with itself.
We know we can create America's energy independence again.
Investment.
The market's anticipating the rate getting very close to zero in fairly short order.
Volatility is back, so that's going to make for more cautious trading.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Good morning, everyone. Paul Sweeney and Tom Keene, we welcome you to Bloomberg Surveillance. We welcome you across this nation and worldwide as well. Particularly good morning to all of you on our various digital product. We've gotten in so much response about Bloomberg.com, about TV Go, Radio Go, and the rest of it on the terminal, and of course many other ways to listen to us. We thank you for listening to us at your homes during this historic moment for the nation. Paul Sweeney and Tom Keene. And Paul, there's just so many ways to sum this up. Before we get to David Wilson and touch on with Margaret Brennan at Face the Nation is well, Paul, the week in oil, and then just getting to, I just feel like, Paul, it's like, can we just get the market open and then the market closed and move on to the weekend?
Exactly right, Tom. We're at that point here. And looking at oil here, getting another little bit of a support here at WTI at $17 and about 22 cents a barrel here. But boy, what a week it's been for oil here. I think people are just looking for some stability here. There's certainly concerns about this June contract, as we get closer to that expiration. Will we have another really kind of dislocation like we had with that May contract?
Earnings next week on Microsoft and Amazon. I think 600 of the S&P 500 report next week. And right. David Wilson will be tuned in for that as well. David, give us a market briefing this Friday.
Absolutely, Tom. I mean, we can talk about earnings from companies in the Dow Industrials. There are three of them that have come through since late yesterday. The positive is American Express. The shares up 1.5%. The credit card and travel companies' first quarter earnings were far above analyst average estimate in a Bloomberg survey. Amex set aside $2.6 billion for credit losses and said it's pushing to cut costs. Verizon also out. Not much of a move there, maybe 0.25% down. The phone company beat the average first quarter profit estimate, but came up short on revenue. Now, Verizon cut its full-year earnings forecast and withdrew its sales projections. So it didn't pull back all the numbers like a lot of companies have, but it did do so when it comes to revenue. Then there's Intel, down 4.5%. The chip maker's second quarter earnings forecast trailed estimates. Intel expects to be less profitable in the quarter because of lower revenue and production costs for its next generation of chips. Intel withdrew annual projections, all this happening late yesterday. Another company in the Dow, Johnson & Johnson, up just a touch, maybe 0.25%. The healthcare company joined forces with a contract drug manufacturer, Emergent Biosolutions, to work on a COVID-19 vaccine. Now, Emergent also publicly traded. The ticker is EBS, and it's up 8%. You've got Edwards Lifesciences up 6.5%. The heart valve maker posted first quarter earnings and sales that beat projections. Now, that said, Edwards cut their forecast because hospitals are shunning heart procedures to focus on COVID-19 patients. Union Pacific's up 3%. The railroad is higher for a second day after reporting first quarter results that surpassed estimates. And here's a bit of a quirk. Union Pacific, being a railroad, it's counted as an industrial company in S&P's indexes, and it's become the most heavily weighted company in the S&P 500 Industrials Index. So it shows you how things are changing.
Yep.
Splunk's down 2%. The maker of data analysis software was lowered the equivalent of hold from by Cowen. The firm cited Splunk's dependence on installations at corporate offices. Not many of them are up and running quite as they were, for sure. Autoliv's up 6.5%. The auto parts maker's first quarter earnings were well above estimates as demand rebounded in China, one of the company's biggest markets. Sales also beat projections. World Wrestling Entertainment up 15.5%. The company's revenue beat the average estimate for the first time in 5 quarters. Earnings also topped projections. WWE benefited from increases in television rights fees and video viewers. And if you look at the most active stocks in early trading, you see a whole lot of shale producers whose shares are below $1. Most active is Oasis Petroleum. It's up 32%. Then you have Denbury Resources up 54%, and Cowan Petroleum up 22%. So you're seeing a rebound, especially in those penny stocks in the energy patch. JCPenney, though, not so good, down 12.5%. People with knowledge of the matter said the department store chain has begun preparing for a bankruptcy filing.
Right.
They said Penny is in talks with banks for a loan to finance operations under Chapter 11 protection. Penny and its banks declined to comment.
Very good. David Wilson, thank you so much. It will be an extraordinary weekend of political discourse. I guess off another presidential briefing of this Friday afternoon and maybe even Saturday afternoon as well. Margaret Brennan does Face the Nation. She's just done a terrific job over the recent weeks, and she will no doubt have to brush up on her University of Virginia chemistry courses in inorganic chemistry. That's the famed Chem 1410 course that I know she took years ago. Margaret, that was an extraordinary moment yesterday as the first presidential chemist went into a discussion on disinfectants and UV. How will you approach that this weekend on Face the Nation?
I know. That's a good question, Dom. In listening to the speculation from the White House podium on untested, unproven, not fully researched possible products and its impact on the virus, it contrasted so strongly with Chancellor Angela Merkel of Germany, a trained scientist who has been so precise in her language and specific in her descriptions. And it's just such a statement on where we are as a country.
Margaret, very quickly here, what does CBS report is the response of the two esteemed physicians on stage with the president?
Well, the White House briefing log the White House has now had to correct does include Dr. Deborah Birx saying no, this not as a treatment, that there is no efficacy as a treatment to the things that Homeland Security described as being effective on surfaces for cleaning, things like bleach and isopropyl alcohol. So she very sort of politely from the sidelines chimed in, but obviously the amount of time spent describing things was far greater by the president. But we've had those, as I'm sure you've talked about, those companies who produce some of these products saying, no, actually, please do not imbibe, ingest, or digest any part of the chemicals we create.
So, Margaret, what's the thinking at CBS News and or kind of the Washington press corps in general about continuing to cover these press conferences, given that, some of the information is not only misleading, erroneous, but perhaps even dangerous?
Right. Well, CBS News has not been taking them wall-to-wall live on the network. Our digital service has and continues to stream them. That's how I watch it from my home. But part of that is our job as journalists to be the curators and fact-checkers on content. Did we imagine that we'd be in a scenario of a global pandemic where we'd have to be correcting the President of the United States, or making sure that everything he says has adequate context so that people at home don't take that as personal advice. These are extraordinary times. I think there's a real hunger for fact from medical professionals. So certainly what Dr. Birx says and Dr. Fauci, we know and follow up with as well with our guests, like I will this weekend with Dr. Scott Gottlieb, the former FDA commissioner, and we'll also talk to the governor of Maryland and the mayor of San Francisco about what they're doing on the front lines themselves.
Margaret, what's the expectation over the next couple of days as it relates to this next step of the fiscal stimulus? That first one was the most recent one was fairly bipartisan. This seems to have a little bit more tension attached to it.
It does. And a warning essentially from Mitch McConnell that he doesn't quite have the appetite for another round, particularly if it involves more funding for states, which has been one of the things Democrats have been calling for. That's one of the things I'm going to talk about on Sunday with Larry Hogan, the governor of Maryland, who is a Republican and who has issued a call with a bipartisan group of governors saying we need $500 billion in cash as soon as possible, because unlike the federal government at the state level, they can't print money. They have to continue to pay for essential services and don't want to face a scenario that Mitch McConnell, the Republican leader, floated of a potential bankruptcy. Yeah. This is a fight we're going to continue to watch in Washington.
Margaret Brennan, thank you so much. Of course, Margaret Brennan, and you can see it on the CBS television networks, Face the Nation. Sunday morning, you could hear it on Bloomberg Radio. We do that at 2 p.m. in New York, Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 1061, Boston, Newbury Report. Face the Nation this Sunday, 2 p.m. on Bloomberg Radio. Paul?
Yeah, interesting, Tom. It'd be very interesting to see. I mean, it's just when you see these press conferences, you got to weigh the balance of kind of getting some information from the federal government versus some potential for misinformation, and it requires the media and other experts to kind of come back and kind of correct the record and make some changes there. So it's a balancing act for the media and for the experts as well.
We will see as well. Face the Nation, of course. Look for that 2 p.m. Sunday on Bloomberg Radio. With our news in New York, here's Michael Barr.
Tom, Paul, thank you very much. Some non-essential businesses in Georgia reopened today, despite widespread public support for taking things slow. Bowling alleys, barbers, and hair salons can open in Georgia. However, Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms says it's too soon and irresponsible. A new ABC News Ipsos poll showed 72% believe moving too quickly to loosen restrictions is a greater threat to the country than moving too slowly. The shortage of coronavirus tests is one of the biggest obstacles to controlling the spread of the virus in the U.S. Bloomberg's Martin DeCarroll reports that the Trump administration claims the shortage is being dealt with.
Governors, public health experts, and business owners say the workforce cannot safely return unless the virus can be tracked by testing people often. FDA Commissioner Stephen Hahn.
We are confident that we have enough tests for phase one of the Reopening America plan, but we do acknowledge the fact that we need to keep the pressure on developing more tests and getting more tests out there.
The COVID tracking project says only about 4.5 million tests have been performed in the U.S. so far. Reopening the economy could require a dramatic increase. The White House said there would be 27 million tests available by the end of March, but that did not pan out. In Washington, Martin DeCarroll, Bloomberg Radio.
Government research shows bleach and strong rubbing alcohol are considered the best ways to kill coronavirus on inside surfaces. Bill Bryan, a senior science official at the Department of Homeland Security, also says that experiments with coronavirus samples indicate that the virus does not do well under sunlight in warm temperatures or in humid conditions. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Tom, Paul.
Michael Barr, thanks so much. Paul Sweeney, next week is a cloud week. Microsoft, Amazon. It'll be interesting to see. Really, I'm fascinated to see how those two giants do and adapt to this crisis.
Yeah, absolutely, Tom. I think we're going to get some of those big tech earnings next week. And, the Amazons, the Microsofts, even IBM, who reported already talking about the cloud business. It remains one of the big growth drivers within technology overall. And it's been a big source of capital allocation. It's been a big source of revenue growth growth. And we've seen with Amazon, Tom, how profitable the cloud business is. It's kind of turned Amazon in from being a company that kind of really delivered little to no profits to now actually being quite profitable for Amazon investors. So, again, we'll see how that's behaving in a world of a global pandemic.
We'll have to see.
Yeah. So anyway, we're looking at the markets here, Tom. Just a quick data check here before, 17, 18 minutes before we get open here. Still a little bit of green on the screen here. Maybe it looks like we're going to open here a little bit in the green. We have the S&P up about 0.9 of 1%. We'll see if we can hold that to the opening. This is Bloomberg.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know, with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President and Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seizechange.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Influential conversation.
Just this wall and that one to do, Dave, and then we're done. Whoop! Oh, no!
Hello, Steve Sparky.
Pass us that roof tile, Chris.
Yep, sure.
I'll be fun. Oh, no. Saved by the gutter. Built to rough it with contractors. Samsung Rugged Devices. Easy to use, hard to break. Explore the Samsung Rugged range.
Dating can be tricky, especially when you can't meet face-to-face. So it's time to get creative. With the easy way to replace physical dates, Video Call from Bumble, the dating app where women make the first move. Here's Anna Williamson and Tom Reed-Wilson with some tips on connecting online.
It's a bit harder to flirt with limited body language, but nothing beats a smile and some eye contact to show them you're interested.
And have an activity plan for your date. This will help break the ice.
Download Bumble today.
Okay, people, I've got the daily checklist. Who today has eaten dinner for breakfast? Tick. Started a chore you'll never finish? Tick. Done a conference call in your pajamas? Tick. Here's another for your list. BritBox. Streaming the BBC, ITV, Channel 5, and now Channel 4. All in one place and ad-free. So add BritBox to your list and get a 30-day free trial of the biggest box of British box sets. Search BritBox free trial. Tick. Biggest compared to other SVOD providers. Auto-renews at $5.99 a month unless cancelled. T's and C's apply.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. U.S. stock index futures are on the rise as investors assess the latest virus numbers and fresh stimulus measures to limit the economic hit from the coronavirus pandemic. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures are up 24 points. Dow futures up 188. NASDAQ futures up 45. The DAX in Germany's down 0.5%. 10-year Treasury down 4/30 seconds, yield 0.61%, and the yield on the 2-year 0.21%. NYMEX crude oil is up 4.1%. 0.5%, up 69 cents at $17.17 a barrel. COMEX gold is up 0.6% or $11 to $17.5660 an ounce. The euro 1.0799 against the dollar, British pound 1.2355, and the yen at 107.59. And Intel down about 5% in early trading after the chipmaker withdrew its full-year sales forecast. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
Karen, thank you so much. This is the interview of the day on the virology of the moment. He is Andrew Pekos of the Johns Hopkins University. He's out of Pennsylvania and Rutgers, and he is truly expert on the science that underpins this virus, this horrible virus, and this pandemic. We talked today about the last 24-hour news flow on virology.
There's such an important distinction here to make between things that are used as disinfectants, right, that can work on surfaces to kill viruses, things that work topically, which are things that you can put on your skin, which kill viruses, versus things that you take as a drug internally in terms of what you can, and that affects the virus and can limit the virus. All of these things can be toxic to people. It's the amount that we use, the dose, the dilution that we use, that brings it down into a level where it's less harmful for us and is still harmful to the virus or any other pathogen.
I thought the medical officials within the press conference made clear their unhappiness over these comments, and yet it speaks of the plague and Albert Camus, the desperation to find solutions. You're one of our great virological experts. For you and Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx, please tell us how far out there is the solution to this virus.
So there are a number of clinical trials that are going on right now, and while that's not the popular thing to say, there will need some time before we can test some of these treatments to really be sure that they're, number one, not causing any extra harm, and number two, truly are effective. And I think the other thing to pay attention to, though, is this virus induces a broad spectrum of disease. Drugs may be effective against the mild forms of the disease, but perhaps not as effective against the severe forms of the disease. So all these things have to be investigated with clinical trials to make sure that the treatments that are being proposed are actually effective for particular patient populations.
But Andrew, how many drugs do we know of that could work? Yesterday there was quite a lot of hope, and then a big setback when this Gilead drug didn't really go as planned in terms of the Chinese trial. How many more of these drugs will fail just like this one did?
Yeah, so I think the remdesivir trial is a great trial. Some details are lacking, but it seems like that was really targeting severe cases of COVID-19. Targeting severe cases is very, very difficult because people suffering from those severe cases have a combination of the virus causing damage, but also their immune system causing damage. So it may be that relying on just an antiviral drug for severe disease isn't completely the right strategy. We may need to find ways to also temper the immune response that's being induced by the virus for those severe diseases. The remdesivir drug may be able to work in more mild situations or at early times post-infection.
How far away to actually finding a vaccine are we?
A vaccine, we're in the middle of phase 1 clinical trials for a number of different vaccine platforms. We would expect to hear something in the next month or two about some of the initial safety work that's going on with those vaccines, and then the trials that are going to be putting it into patients to look for efficacy are already being lined up under the assumption that some of these drugs will be safe, or these vaccines will be safe. So we're still about a year away from anything in terms of a practical rollout of a vaccine if everything goes well.
Andrew Pekos from the Johns Hopkins University. I thought that was exceptionally timely given the news flow of the last 48 hours. Paul, we're on a Friday, and, I was reading in for the shows this morning, and I just said, it's time to regroup. We're 4 weeks, 5 weeks. We begin the 6th week of this quarantine that we're all in, all of our lives disrupted, and I sort of lost grasp of where Wall Street is. Paul, what is your take on where strategists are right now? How are they recalibrating into May?
Yeah, it's interesting, Tom. I think they're all, trying to get a sense of what this bounce off of the bottom means here. We kind of came peak to trough, Tom, during that March volatility of, a little more than 33%, and, retraced almost half of that. And a lot of strategists that I've been talking to suggest that that's fairly typical to kind of retrace part of the initial pullback. The question is now what do? Do you bounce along this level here?
Yeah.
Do you retest the lows? And I think, we talked to a lot of strategists like Gina Martin Adams. A lot of it's going to be predicated upon the kind of the news we get about the virus, the spread of the virus, or the bending of the curve. So a lot of it is kind of virus induced here, and will be driven by how this plays out. It's not so much a valuation game for a lot of these strategists. It's certainly not an earnings scenario as most companies pull their guidance. It's kind of going to be driven by the duration of kind of the lockdowns and quarantines, and that's kind of driven by the curve of the virus.
I totally agree that it's medicine first. And I think, to be fair, many of the strategists that we're privileged to speak to have been very clear about that. And I'm not sure I know where the medicine is right now, Paul.
No, but that's why it's great, Tom. That's why it's great to get these folks from Johns Hopkins on every morning here on Surveillance, because you really get it. These are the folks that really are informed, and they're talking to everybody within the industry. They're on the front lines of, whether it's in the laboratory work, on the front lines in the emergency rooms, and it's really a great source of information. And that's kind of what I think is going to be driving the narrative for the markets over the next 6 to 12 months.
Well, suddenly it's the end of April and we're on to May. As I said, 7 Days in May. That was a good movie. Good book, too. 7 Days to May. It is, folks. And all of a sudden it's here. And I would suggest over the weekend and into next week, there'll be all sorts of recalibration of dates, whether it's schools, universities, businesses as well. On a Friday, we have equities up. That's a good feeling with the VIX back to that 40 level. I would note through the week, yields have come in. The 10 and 30-year yield really indicate that contraction and whispers of disinflation. Please stay with us. This is Bloomberg. Good morning.
Why is delivering the best client experience a top priority at BNY Mellon's Pershing? Michelle Feinstein, Director of Client Engagement, explains.
Today's investors want a financial relationship that's on demand, customized, and leverages the latest digital technology. At BNY Mellon's Pershing, helping advisory firms and broker-dealers create great experiences for their clients is our priority. Through our integrated wealth experience, we give you a high-touch service, flexible technology choices, and expert insights, so you can deliver a highly personalized experience to your clients at every step, from onboarding to wealth planning, to performance analysis and more. And because we're part of BNY Mellon, you'll benefit from more than 230 years of strength and stability. At Pershing, we're personally invested in your success.
Visit Pershing.com to learn more about Pershing's integrated wealth experience. Pershing LLC and Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC are both members of FINRA and SIPC.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Futures point.
The pressure washer that means your patio is barbecue ready.
The 4K projector that brings the thrill of the cinema to you. The yoga mat that turns your lounge into a studio. With a choice of ways to pay, you can make the most of your leisure time. You can say yes when it matters most at very.co.uk. Goods and services provided by Shop Direct Home Shopping Limited. Credit provided by Shop Direct Finance Company Limited.
Dating can be tricky, especially when you can't meet face to face. So it's time to get creative with the easy way to replace physical dates, video call from Bumble, the dating app where women make the first move. Here's Anna Williamson and Tom Reed-Wilson with some tips on connecting online.
It's a bit harder to flirt with limited body language, but nothing beats a smile and some eye contact to show them you're interested.
And have an activity plan for your date. This will help break the ice.
Download Bumble today.
Okay, people, I've got the daily checklist. Who today has ignored a call on purpose? Tick. Talked yourself out of a workout? Tick. Spent far too long scrolling on your phone? Tick. Here's another for your list. BritBox. Streaming the BBC, ITV, Channel 5 and now Channel 4. All in one place and ad-free. So add BritBox to your list and get a 30-day free trial of the biggest box of British box sets. Search BritBox free trial. Tick. Biggest compared to other SVOD providers. Auto renews at $5.99 a month unless cancelled. T's and C's apply.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
Good morning. I'm Karen Moscow, along with Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney. And the S&P 500 is higher at the open, up 0.6% or 18 points at 2816. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is up 0.8%, up 201 points now at 23,717. And the Nasdaq is up 0.5% or 42 points at 8537. 10-year Treasury down 6/32, yield 0.61%. The yield on the 2-year